A Werewolf Shifter Romance by Lena, from Lena's Romance Library. Chapter 1. When the Storm Breaks. The blood moon hung like a crimson eye in the storm-torn sky, casting everything in shades of violence and shadow. Maya Chen pressed her back against the rough bark of an ancient pine, her breath coming in sharp puffs of vapor that disappeared into the howling wind. Thunder rolled across the mountains like the growl of some primordial beast, and she wondered, not for the first time tonight, how her life had unraveled so completely. 3 hours ago, she'd been Dr. Maya Chen, respected trauma surgeon at Seattle General. Now she was just another woman running through the wilderness in a torn evening gown, her designer heels abandoned somewhere in the mud behind her. The betrayal still burned in her chest like acid. David's face when she'd walked into their penthouse apartment early, expecting to surprise him with news of her promotion. Instead, she'd found him tangled in their sheets with her best friend, their laughter dying as they looked up to see her standing in the doorway like a ghost. "Maya, wait!" David had started, but she was already moving, grabbing her emergency bag, the one she kept packed from her residency days when she never knew if she'd be called away at a moment's notice. Some habits died hard. She'd driven north without thinking, muscle memory taking her toward the cabin her grandmother had left her in the Cascades. The place she'd visited every summer as a child, where she'd learned to identify bird calls and track deer through the underbrush. Where she'd felt safe before the world taught her that safety was an illusion. But now she was lost. The storm had hit just as she'd reached the mountain roads, turning familiar paths into a maze of fallen branches and washed-out asphalt. Her car had finally given up the ghost 20 minutes ago, steam rising from under the hood like incense to forgotten gods. She'd grabbed what she could and started walking, following what she hoped was the right trail. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest in stark black and white. In that brief moment, Maya saw something that made her heart stutter. A massive shape moving through the trees, too large to be a deer, too fluid to be a bear. Her rational mind cataloged possibilities. Elk, maybe, or a trick of shadow and light. But some deeper instinct, one that had kept her ancestors alive in darker times, whispered that she was being hunted. She forced herself to breathe slowly, drawing on years of surgical training. Panic was the enemy. Panic made you stupid, made you dead. She needed to find shelter, needed to... A branch snapped behind her. Maya spun around, her back to the tree, and there it was. A wolf, but not like any wolf she'd seen in nature documentaries. This one was enormous, easily the size of a small horse, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb the moonlight. Its eyes were the color of molten amber, too intelligent, too aware. They locked onto hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The storm raged around them, but the space between predator and prey had become a pocket of absolute stillness. Maya's medical training kicked in, her mind automatically assessing threat levels, escape routes, the distance to the nearest tree thick enough to climb. The wolf took a step forward, and she saw something that made her breath catch. There was a gash along its left flank, dark with blood that looked black in the crimson moonlight. The animal was favoring that side, moving with the careful precision of something fighting against pain. Maya had spent 8 years learning to heal. It was as much a part of her as breathing. "You're hurt," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. The wolf's ears pricked forward, and for a moment, she could have sworn she saw surprise flicker in those golden eyes. Then another sound cut through the storm. Howls in the distance, multiple voices raised in something that sounded almost like a war cry. The wolf's head snapped toward the sound, lips pulling back from teeth that gleamed like ivory daggers. When it looked back at her, there was something almost human in its expression. Something like decision. Before Maya could process what was happening, the wolf had closed the distance between them in two impossibly fluid bounds. She pressed herself against the tree, certain she was about to die, but instead of teeth at her throat, she felt something else entirely. The world lurched sideways as massive jaws closed gently around the fabric of her coat, lifting her as easily as a mother cat might carry a kitten. Maya's feet left the ground, and she found herself being carried deeper into the forest at a pace that would have been impossible for human legs. She should have been screaming. Every rational part of her mind was cataloging the ways this could end. Mauled by a wild animal, torn apart by a pack, lost forever in the wilderness. But instead, she felt safe, protected. The wolf's grip on her coat was careful, deliberate. It was taking her somewhere specific. The howls behind them grew more distant, and after what felt like an eternity, the wolf finally stopped. Maya found herself being deposited gently on a bed of pine needles in front of what looked like the entrance to a cave. No, not a cave. As her eyes adjusted, she realized it was more like a shelter carved into the rock face, with rough walls that looked almost deliberately shaped. The wolf set her down and immediately limped several steps away, putting distance between them. In the dim red light filtering through the canopy, Maya could see the wound more clearly. It was deep, still bleeding freely, and there were claw marks that suggested whatever had caused it had been aiming to kill. Maya's medical instincts overrode her fear. She opened her emergency bag. Thank God she'd grabbed it, and pulled out a small flashlight. The wolf tensed as the beam illuminated the space between them, but it didn't run. "I know you probably can't understand me," she said, keeping her voice low and steady. "But you're losing too much blood. If you don't let me help you, you're going to die." The wolf's amber eyes fixed on her face with that same unsettling intelligence. Then, to her amazement, it lay down, resting its massive head on its front paws in what could only be described as submission. Maya approached slowly, her hands already pulling supplies from her bag. She had field dressing materials, antibiotics, even a suture kit, the benefits of being an emergency room doctor with paranoid tendencies. As she knelt beside the animal, she could feel the heat radiating from its body, could hear the slight wheeze in its breathing that suggested internal trauma. "Easy," she murmured, using the same tone she used with frightened patients. "I'm just going to clean this up, okay?" The wolf remained perfectly still as she worked, even when she poured antiseptic over the wounds. The only sign of pain was a slight tremor that ran through its massive frame. As Maya stitched the deepest of the gashes, she found herself talking, something she always did during surgery, a habit that had driven her professors crazy during residency. "You know, I'm supposed to be at a hospital fundraiser right now," she said, drawing the needle through with practiced precision. Black tie, rubber chicken dinner, schmoozing with donors. Instead, I'm performing veterinary surgery on a wolf in the middle of a thunderstorm. My mother would have something to say about this. The wolf made a sound that was almost like a chuckle, and Maya's hands stilled for a moment. When she looked up, those amber eyes were watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. Gratitude, maybe. Or something deeper. "There," she said finally, tying off the last suture. "That should hold, but you need to take it easy for a few days. No running through the forest, no fighting with whatever did this to you." As if in response to her words, the howls echoed through the night again, closer this time. The wolf's head jerked up, and Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. Whatever was out there, it was still hunting. The wolf rose to its feet with careful precision, testing the leg. Then it did something that made Maya's breath catch. It looked directly at her and nodded. A deliberate, unmistakably human gesture. Before she could process what that meant, the animal was moving again, circling her in a gesture that felt protective. It settled down between her and the cave entrance, a living barrier between Maya and whatever was prowling through the darkness beyond. Maya sank back against the stone wall, her medical bag clutched in her lap, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. She was a doctor, a woman of science, trained to think in terms of evidence and logic. Wolves didn't nod. They didn't make decisions to protect strange humans who wandered into their territory. But as she looked at the massive creature standing guard over her, its amber eyes scanning the forest with intelligent awareness, Maya found herself wondering if maybe there were things in this world that science couldn't explain. The blood moon continued its arc across the storm-dark sky, and somewhere in the distance, something howled with a voice that sounded almost like rage. Maya pulled her torn coat closer around her shoulders and settled in to wait for dawn, protected by a creature that shouldn't exist, and trying not to think about the way its eyes had looked so heartbreakingly human. Outside the shelter, the storm raged on, and the hunt continued. Chapter 2. The Stranger at Dawn. Maya woke to silence and the scent of wood smoke. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Her body ached from sleeping on stone, and her evening gown was a wreck of torn silk and mud stains. Then memory crashed back, the betrayal, the flight, the storm, and the wolf with eyes like molten gold. She sat up quickly, looking around the cave-like shelter. The massive animal was gone, but in its place sat a man feeding a small fire with careful precision. He was bare-chested, wearing only a pair of dark jeans that looked like they'd seen better days. His back was to her, revealing a tapestry of scars across bronze skin and muscles that spoke of a life spent doing more than sitting behind a desk. Dark hair fell in waves to his shoulders, and when he turned at the sound of her movement, Maya felt her breath catch. His face was sharp-angled and severe, the kind of masculine beauty that belonged in old paintings of warrior gods. But it was his eyes that made her heart stutter. Amber, the exact shade she'd seen in the wolf's gaze just hours before. "You're awake," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate in her chest. "I was beginning to worry." Maya scrambled backward until her shoulders hit the stone wall. "Where? Who are you? Where's the wolf?" Something flickered across his expression, too quick to read. Gone. Wolves don't usually stick around when they smell humans. He gestured to the fire. "Found your car about a mile down the trail. Engine's dead, but I salvaged some things from the trunk." He indicated a small pile beside the fire. Her emergency blanket, a bottle of water, the protein bars she kept for long shifts at the hospital. Practical items, but it meant he'd gone through her belongings. The thought made her nervous. "Thank you," she said carefully, "but I should get going. My phone might have signal if I can get to higher ground." "Phone won't help you up here." He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing toward the cave ceiling. "Storm took out the cell tower, and the roads won't be clear for days. You're stuck." The casual way he delivered this information sent a chill down her spine. Stuck how? There has to be a way down the mountain. Not unless you fancy a 20-mile hike through unmarked wilderness. He finally looked at her directly, and Maya felt pinned by that amber gaze. "The trail you were on last night? It doesn't go anywhere near the main road. You were heading deeper into the mountains." Maya's medical training had taught her to assess people quickly, to read body language, to identify threats. This man radiated danger like heat from a forge, but not the kind that suggested he wanted to hurt her. It was something else, something that made her think of barely leashed power and secrets that ran bone deep. "What's your name?" she asked. "Kieran." He said it like he was testing how it sounded. "Kieran McReynolds." "I'm Maya, Dr. Maya Chen." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Doctor? That explains the impressive field surgery. Maya's blood turned to ice. What? Found some blood on the ground outside, and your medical bag was open. Looked like someone, or something, got patched up. His expression was carefully neutral, but she caught something in his tone. You treat a lot of wild animals, Doctor. Chen? She couldn't breathe. He knew. Somehow this stranger knew she'd helped the wolf, and there was no good reason he should know that unless… You, she whispered, the pieces clicking into place with terrifying clarity. The wolf. It was you. Kieran went very still, his hand frozen halfway to the fire. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackling of burning wood and Maya's own rapid heartbeat. That's impossible, he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. Your eyes, the scars. Maya's mind was racing, cataloging details with clinical precision. The wound, show me your left side. Maya, show me. After a pause that stretched like eternity, Kieran slowly turned. There, along his ribs, was a line of neat black stitches exactly where she'd sewn up the wolf's gash. The skin around it was already healing with a speed that defied medical explanation. Maya stared at the evidence of her own handiwork and felt her worldview crumble. This isn't possible. People don't just… they can't… change into wolves? Kieran's voice was quiet, almost gentle. No, most people can't. Werewolves. The word felt ridiculous in her mouth, like something from a bad movie. You're telling me werewolves are real. Shifters. His correction was automatic. And yeah, we're real. Have been for longer than your kind have been writing down stories about us. Maya pressed her hands to her temples, trying to ward off the headache building behind her eyes. This is insane. I'm having a breakdown. That's what this is. Too much stress, too little sleep, and my brain is just… You saved my life. The simple statement cut through her spiraling thoughts. Kieran was looking at her with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as if he could see straight through to her soul. Those howls you heard last night? That was the Blackwater Pack. They've been hunting me for 3 days, ever since I crossed into their territory. His jaw tightened. I was trying to get home, but I took a wrong turn somewhere in the storm. By the time I realized where I was, they'd picked up my trail. Why were they hunting you? Because I'm not supposed to exist. The bitterness in his voice was like acid. I'm a lone wolf, Maya. No pack, no family, no protection under the old laws. That makes me fair game for anyone who wants to claim my territory. Maya found herself studying his face, noting the way his shoulders carried tension like armor, the careful way he held himself apart from her. How long have you been alone? 7 years. The answer was immediate, like he'd been counting every day. Something in his tone made her chest tighten with unexpected sympathy. What happened to your pack? For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, they're dead. All of them. And it was my fault. The pain in those words was raw, unhealed. Maya recognized it, the guilt that came with losing people you were supposed to protect. She'd seen it in the mirror often enough after losing patients, after making the kinds of impossible choices that came with practicing emergency medicine. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Kieran's head snapped up, surprise flickering across his features. You're not going to ask what I did? How many people died because of me? I've seen enough trauma to know that guilt and responsibility aren't always the same thing. Maya pulled the emergency blanket around her shoulders like armor. Besides, if you were really a monster, you wouldn't have spent the night protecting me from whatever was out there. Something shifted in Kieran's expression, a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. You don't understand what I am, Maya. What being near me could cost you. Maybe not. But I understand what it's like to lose everything in one night. She thought of David, of walking into her own home and finding her life in ruins. I understand what it feels like to have nowhere left to run." They sat in silence for a moment, the fire crackling between them. Finally, Kieran spoke. "The roads will be clear in 2, maybe 3 days. I can guide you back to civilization then. And until then? Until then, you're under my protection." The words came out like a vow, heavy with meanings Maya didn't fully understand. "The Blackwater Pack won't come near you while you're with me. They may want me dead, but they won't risk breaking guest law." Guest law? Old rules. Older than the human settlements in these mountains. Kieran stood, moving with the same fluid grace she'd seen in the wolf. No pack can harm someone under another's protection. It's one of the few laws all shifters respect. Maya watched him move around their small shelter, checking the entrance, scanning the forest beyond. Even in human form, he radiated that same protective awareness she'd felt from the wolf. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Kieran paused, his back to her. "Because you helped me first. Because you saw me bleeding and didn't run. Because ... He turned, and for just a moment, his carefully controlled mask slipped. "Because I haven't met anyone in 7 years who looked at me like I was worth saving." The honesty in his voice hit her like a physical blow. Maya found herself standing, moving toward him before she consciously decided to. "Kieran?" A howl echoed through the morning air, distant but unmistakable. Kieran's entire body went rigid, his head tilting as if listening to sounds she couldn't hear. "They're still out there," he said quietly. "The Blackwater Pack?" "Among others." His expression darkened. Words going to spread that a lone wolf was seen with a human woman. That's complicated. Maya felt ice form in her stomach. Complicated how? Kieran looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something in his amber eyes that might have been regret. Because, according to shifter law, any human who learns our secret has 2 choices: join a pack through the mating bond, or die to protect the secret. The words hung between them like a blade, and Maya realized that in saving the wolf's life, she might have sealed her own fate. Outside their shelter, another howl rose to meet the morning sky, and this time, it was answered by a dozen others. Chapter 3. Secrets in the Blood. Maya stared at Kieran, her mind struggling to process what he'd just told her. "You're saying I have to die because I know what you are?" "Not me." Kieran's voice was tight with something that might have been anger. "The law. It's older than any living shifter, carved in stone by alphas who believed secrecy was the only thing standing between us and extinction. But you're telling me there's another option. A mating bond." Maya's clinical training kicked in, the part of her that dealt with crisis by cataloging facts. "What exactly does that mean?" Kieran turned away, staring out at the forest. "It means binding your life to a shifter's permanently. Taking their mark, joining their pack, becoming part of their world completely. Most humans, they don't survive the process." The casual way he delivered that last piece of information made Maya's knees weak. Don't survive how? The bond isn't just ceremonial. It changes you on a cellular level. Your body chemistry, your aging process, your connection to the pack mind. Some humans adapt, others... He shrugged, but she caught the tightness around his eyes. "Others burn out from the inside." Maya sank back against the cave wall, her emergency blanket clutched around her like armor. "So my choices are death, or a process that might kill me anyway." "There's a third option." She looked up sharply. "Which is?" "You could run. Get as far away from these mountains as possible and never look back. Most packs won't chase a human beyond their territory lines, especially if there's no direct threat to pack security." Hope flickered in Maya's chest. But you've seen me shift. You know what to look for now." And there are shifters everywhere, Maya. In every major city, every small town. If you accidentally stumble across another pack's secret, Kieran's amber eyes met hers. They won't all be as understanding as I am. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the walls of her new reality closing in. This is insane. 24 hours ago, my biggest worry was making partner at the hospital. What happened? The question came out softer than she expected. What were you running from when you ended up in these mountains? For a moment, Maya considered deflecting. She'd spent years perfecting the art of keeping her private life separate from her professional one, of maintaining control even when everything inside her was falling apart. But something about Kieran's tone, the genuine concern beneath the gruff exterior, made the words spill out. I found my fiancé in bed with my best friend. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. God, saying it out loud makes it sound so mundane, like something from a soap opera. Betrayal's never mundane when it happens to you. The understanding in his voice made her throat tight. I thought I knew them. David and I were together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months. Sarah and I have been friends since medical school. I trusted them both completely. And now? Now I don't know how to trust anyone. Maya pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself smaller. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, all the times they must have been lying to my face. Makes you wonder what else you're blind to. Kieran was quiet for a long moment. Then, 7 years ago, I had a pack. 32 wolves, including my younger brother and the woman I thought I was going to mate with. We controlled territory from the Canadian border down to the Columbia River. Maya heard the past tense and felt her chest tighten with dread. There was a dispute with a neighboring pack, the Silver Moons. Border skirmishes, territorial posturing, the kind of thing that had been going on for decades. I was supposed to negotiate a peace treaty. Kieran's hands clenched into fists. Instead, I walked into a trap. What kind of trap? The kind where the woman you love sells out everything you care about for a chance at more power. His voice was carefully controlled, but Maya could hear the rage simmering beneath it. Elena had been feeding information to the Silver Moons for months. Patrol routes, pack weaknesses, when we'd be most vulnerable. All so she could become their alpha's mate, instead of settling for a beta's second-in-command. Maya's medical training had exposed her to plenty of human cruelty, but something about the betrayal in Kieran's voice hit her differently. Your pack, what happened to them? Slaughtered? Every last one. The words came out flat, emotionless. The Silver Moons hit us during the new moon, when our shifting abilities are weakest. I was the only one who escaped, and only because Elena wanted me to live with what I'd done. What you'd done. Maya's voice sharpened. You didn't betray them. She did. I brought her into the pack. I trusted her with information that got my people killed. I was so blinded by what I thought was love that I never saw the signs. Kieran finally looked at her, and the pain in his amber eyes was devastating. My brother died calling my name, believing I'd come back for him. But I was already running. Maya understood now why he'd been alone for 7 years, why he carried himself like a man expecting the world to turn against him at any moment. That wasn't your fault, Kieran. Wasn't it? His laugh was bitter. I was supposed to be their leader, their protector. Instead, I led them into a massacre. You made decisions based on the information you had. Elena's the one who chose betrayal. Maya found herself leaning forward, her medical instincts kicking in again. Not to heal physical wounds this time, but emotional ones. Guilt is a luxury, Kieran. It lets us pretend we had more control over a situation than we actually did. Kieran studied her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Is that what you tell yourself about your fiancé? The question hit like a physical blow. That's different. Is it? You're sitting here blaming yourself for missing signs, for not being smart enough or suspicious enough to see what was happening. But David's the one who chose to cheat. Sarah's the one who chose to betray your friendship. Their decisions, their responsibility. Maya felt tears sting her eyes and blinked them back angrily. I hate that you're right. Doesn't make it easier to believe, though. Kieran's voice gentled. Took me about 5 years to stop having nightmares where I could have saved them all if I'd just been smarter, faster, more careful about who I trusted. Do they still come? The nightmares? Sometimes. Usually when I'm stressed or... He cut himself off, but Maya caught the look that crossed his face. Or when you meet someone new you might actually care about, she finished quietly. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications neither of them seemed ready to address. Outside their shelter, the forest was stirring to life. Birds calling, small creatures rustling through undergrowth, the ordinary sounds of a world that suddenly felt anything but ordinary. Finally, Kieran spoke. The Blackwater Pack will be watching the main trails down the mountain. If we're going to get you out of here safely, we'll have to take the long way around. How long? 4, maybe 5 days of hard hiking. And that's assuming we don't run into any other packs along the way. He paused. You sure you want to risk it? Running, I mean. There are other options. Maya thought about what he'd told her, about mating bonds and pack law, about the humans who didn't survive the process of joining a shifter's world. Then she thought about David's face when she'd walked in on him, about the comfortable life she'd built that had turned out to be built on lies. What would happen if I stayed? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Kieran went very still. Stayed how? With you. Not joining a pack exactly, but not running either. Maya. Her name came out rough, warning. You don't understand what you're suggesting. Then explain it to me. Kieran was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. I'm a lone wolf. I don't have pack protection to offer you, no territory that's safely mine. Being with me would make you a target for every alpha who sees you as leverage against me. But it's possible? For a human to survive with a shifter outside of pack law? It's been done. He wouldn't meet her eyes. But the cost is usually everything you are. Everything you were before. And I won't be responsible for destroying another person. He cut himself off again. Another person you what? Kieran stood abruptly, moving to the cave entrance. We should get moving. The longer we stay in one place, the easier we are to track. Maya recognized deflection when she heard it. She'd perfected the technique herself. But as she watched Kieran systematically pack up their meager camp, she found herself wondering what he'd been about to say. More importantly, she found herself wondering why the idea of staying with him didn't terrify her the way it should. A howl echoed through the mountains, closer than before, and Kieran's entire body tensed. Time to go, he said, and Maya heard something in his voice that made her stomach clench with dread. Whatever was hunting them was getting closer, and their sanctuary was about to become a trap. Chapter 4. The hunt begins. Maya had always prided herself on being in good shape. Years of 12-hour shifts on her feet, weekend hiking trips, regular gym sessions. She'd thought she was prepared for physical challenges. But following Kieran through the mountain wilderness was like trying to keep pace with a force of nature. He moved through the forest with an economy of motion that spoke of decades spent in wild places. Every step was deliberate, chosen to avoid loose rocks or brittle branches that might give away their position. He navigated by landmarks Maya couldn't even see. A particular arrangement of stones, the way moss grew on certain trees, changes in the forest floor that meant nothing to her untrained eye. They'd been hiking for 3 hours, moving steadily uphill through increasingly dense woodland. Maya's evening gown had been reduced to tatters within the first mile, so she'd changed into spare clothes from her emergency bag. Hiking pants and a thermal shirt that felt woefully inadequate against the mountain cold. Her feet, in lightweight hiking boots, were already developing blisters despite the thick socks. But it wasn't the physical discomfort that worried her. It was the way Kieran kept pausing to scan the forest behind them, his amber eyes tracking movement she couldn't detect, his nostrils flaring as if reading messages in the air itself. "How close are they?" Maya asked during one of these stops, keeping her voice barely above a whisper. "Close enough." Kieran's jaw was tight with tension. 3, maybe 4 wolves. They're staying just out of sight, matching our pace. "Why don't they just attack?" "Because they're smart." He started moving again, angling toward what looked like an impenetrable wall of thorny underbrush. "They're herding us towards something, probably an ambush point where the terrain works in their favor." Maya followed him through a gap in the thicket that she never would have seen on her own. "So what do? We don't give them what they want." Kieran's voice carried grim satisfaction. "There's an old mining trail about 2 miles north of here. If I can get us to it without them realizing what we're doing, we can disappear into the tunnel system." Tunnels? These mountains are honeycombed with abandoned mine shafts. Most packs avoid them. Too easy to get lost. Too many ways for prey to vanish without a trace. He glanced back at her. "Problem is, humans can get just as lost down there." Maya caught the implication. "But you know the way through?" "I've been mapping those tunnels for 7 years. It's where I go when I need to disappear completely." Something in his tone suggested this wasn't the first time he'd been hunted through these mountains. They crested a ridge, and Maya got her first clear view of the landscape ahead. Rolling hills covered in dense forest stretched to the horizon, broken by rocky outcroppings and the silver thread of a distant river. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. Wild and untouched. The kind of place that reminded you how small human concerns really were in the grand scheme of things. But beauty couldn't distract her from the feeling of being watched. Even with her limited wilderness experience, Maya could sense something wrong in the forest around them. The normal sounds, bird calls, rustling leaves, the chittering of small animals, had gone quiet. The silence felt expectant, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Kieran," she said quietly. "I know." His voice was tense. "They're moving to cut us off." As if summoned by his words, a howl rose from the forest ahead of them, not behind, where Maya had expected their pursuers to be, but directly across their intended path. It was answered immediately by 2 more voices, one from each side. Maya felt ice form in her stomach. "They're surrounding us." Classic pack hunting strategy. Kieran's expression was grim but not surprised. Drive the prey toward the strongest members, then close the circle. "So what's the plan?" Instead of answering, Kieran closed his eyes and tilted his head, as if listening to something Maya couldn't hear. When he opened them again, his amber gaze had taken on an otherworldly intensity. "There's a 4th one," he said quietly. "Alpha, from the way he's positioning himself. He's the real threat." "How can you—" Maya started to ask, then remembered what Kieran was. "Right. Wolf senses. Enhanced in human form, but not as sharp as when I'm shifted." He was already moving again, this time angling away from their original path toward a steep slope covered in loose scree. "The Alpha's trying to force us downhill, toward an open meadow where his pack can surround us. Instead, we're going up." Maya looked at the treacherous-looking slope and felt her stomach drop. "Up there?" "Up there." Kieran's voice brooked no argument. Stay close, step where I step, and whatever you do, don't look down. The climb was a nightmare of loose rocks and hidden gaps that could turn an ankle or worse. Maya's hands were scraped raw within minutes, her legs burning with the effort of maintaining balance on surfaces that seemed designed to send her tumbling back down the mountain. More than once, only Kieran's quick reflexes kept her from falling. His hand steady on her arm, his body positioned to block her slide toward empty air. "You're doing great," he murmured during one particularly treacherous section. "Just a little farther." Maya would have laughed if she'd had breath to spare. She was a surgeon, someone who prided herself on steady hands and precise movements. But this kind of physical challenge was completely outside her experience. Every muscle in her body was screaming, and they weren't even halfway up the slope. Below them, the howls were getting closer, more insistent. Maya caught glimpses of movement through the trees, dark shapes that moved too fluidly to be entirely human. "They're not shifting," Kieran said, as if reading her thoughts. "Probably trying to avoid leaving tracks that could be identified later. Smart. Is that good or bad for us?" "Mixed blessing. They can't match my speed in human form, but they also can't be tracked back to their pack if something goes wrong." He helped her over a particularly treacherous patch of loose stone. "And it means they're taking this seriously enough to maintain plausible deniability." Maya was about to ask what he meant when a new sound reached them from below. The unmistakable crack of a rifle being loaded. Kieran went absolutely still. Shit. They have guns? Apparently. His amber eyes were scanning the forest below with predatory intensity. That changes things significantly. Another rifle crack echoed through the mountains, and this time Maya heard the distinctive whine of a bullet ricocheting off rock uncomfortably close to their position. "Move," Kieran growled, and suddenly they were scrambling up the slope with desperate speed. Maya's world narrowed to the next handhold, the next foothold, the burning in her lungs as she forced her body beyond its limits. Behind them, more shots rang out, each one closer than the last. She could hear voices now, men calling to each other in a language she didn't recognize, coordinating their attack with military precision. "There," Kieran said, pointing toward a narrow ledge about 30 feet above them. "Cave entrance. If we can reach it." His words were cut off by the sharp crack of another rifle shot. This time, Maya heard Kieran grunt in pain, saw him stumble against the rock face. "Kieran." She reached for him, saw blood spreading across his left shoulder. "You're hit. Just a graze." But his face was pale, and the way he was favoring his left arm suggested it was worse than he was letting on. "Keep climbing." Maya's medical training warred with survival instinct. Every part of her wanted to stop, to assess the wound, to provide treatment. But the continuing rifle fire from below made it clear that stopping meant dying. They reached the ledge just as another volley of shots rang out, stone chips exploding around them like deadly confetti. Kieran pushed Maya toward the cave entrance, his body shielding her from the gunfire below. The cave was deeper than it looked from outside, stretching back into darkness that seemed absolute after the bright mountain sunlight. Maya fumbled for her flashlight, hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. "Don't," Kieran said quietly. "Light will give away our position." "But I can't see anything, and you're bleeding." "I'll heal." His voice was tight with pain but certain. "Shifter metabolism. The bullet went clean through and it's already starting to close." Maya wanted to argue, to insist on proper medical care, but the sound of voices outside the cave made her swallow her protests. Their pursuers had reached the base of the slope and were arguing about something in that foreign language. "What are they saying?" she whispered. Kieran was silent for a moment, listening, debating whether to follow us up. The Alpha's pushing for it, but the others are worried about the climb with full gear. And, The Alpha's winning. Kieran's tone was grim. We need to move deeper into the cave system. There's a passage about 50 yards back that connects to the old mine tunnels I mentioned. Maya followed him into the darkness, one hand trailing along the cave wall for guidance, the other gripping her flashlight like a weapon. The air grew colder as they moved away from the entrance, and she could hear the distant drip of water echoing from unseen depths. "Kieran," she said quietly, "those men down there, they're not just shifters, are they?" "No." His voice carried a weight of something that might have been dread. "Professional hunters, from the equipment and tactics, which means this isn't just about territory disputes anymore." "What do you mean?" "Someone hired them to track me specifically. Someone who knows enough about my abilities to bring silver bullets and military-grade weapons." He paused, and Maya could hear him breathing carefully, managing pain. "Someone who wants me dead badly enough to risk exposing the entire shifter community to human attention." The implications of that settled over Maya like a cold blanket. "Your ex-lover, Elena. Maybe. Or someone she's working with now." Kieran's laugh was bitter. 7 years, and she's still finding new ways to destroy what's left of my life. They'd reached a junction where the cave split into 3 passages. Kieran chose the middle one without hesitation, moving with the confidence of someone who knew these tunnels intimately. Maya tried not to think about what would happen if they got separated down here, if she had to find her way out alone. "There's something else," Kieran said after they'd been walking for several minutes. "Something about the way they were tracking us that doesn't make sense." "What do you mean?" "Pack hunting usually relies on scent trails and predictable prey behavior, but they've been anticipating our moves too accurately, getting ahead of us when they should be following behind." His voice was troubled. "It's like they know where we're going before we do." Maya felt ice form in her stomach. "You think there's another leak? Someone feeding them information?" "I think someone's been watching me for a long time, learning my patterns, my escape routes, my safe places." The pain in Kieran's voice wasn't entirely physical anymore. "I think I've been living in a trap for months without realizing it." The tunnel they were following began to slope downward, and Maya could hear running water somewhere ahead. The air smelled different too, less of stone and earth, more of metal and old wood. "We're close to the mining complex," Kieran said. "Once we're in the main shaft, we can disappear completely. It'll take them days to search all the connected tunnels, assuming they're willing to risk it at all." But as they rounded a bend in the passage, Maya saw something that made her heart stop. Light. Not the warm yellow glow of her flashlight, but the harsh white beam of industrial-grade illumination. Someone was waiting for them in the mining complex. Someone who had known exactly where they were heading. Kieran cursed softly in what might have been Gaelic, and Maya realized that their sanctuary had become another trap. "How many are there?" she whispered. Kieran closed his eyes, tilting his head to listen. "At least 6. Armed. And..." His expression darkened. "One of them smells like pack alpha. Not Blackwater. Something else entirely." "Options?" "We can try to backtrack, find another route. But those hunters are still behind us, and they'll have called for backup by now." Kieran's amber eyes met hers in the dim light. "Or we can go forward and face whatever's waiting." Maya thought about her comfortable life in Seattle, about the hospital job she'd probably lost by now, about David and Sarah and all the ordinary human problems that had seemed so important just 2 days ago. Then she looked at Kieran, wounded, hunted, but still standing between her and whatever threats lurked in the darkness ahead. "Forward," she said quietly. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Something flickered in Kieran's expression. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. "Maya," You don't understand what you're committing to. If we're captured, if they decide you know too much, then we don't get captured. Maya surprised herself with the steel in her own voice. You've spent 7 years running, Kieran. Maybe it's time to stop. The sound of boots on stone echoed from the passage behind them. Their pursuers had made it into the cave system. Ahead, the lights waited like stars in a hostile sky. Kieran looked at her for a long moment, and Maya saw something in his amber eyes she hadn't seen before. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of trust. "All right," he said quietly. "But if this goes bad, you follow my lead and don't look back. Promise me." "Promise," Maya lied, because they both knew that if it came down to saving him or saving herself, she'd already made her choice. Together, they walked toward the lights and whatever waited for them in the depths of the mountain. Chapter 5. The Alpha's Claim. The mining complex opened up into a vast underground chamber that took Maya's breath away. Ancient wooden beams stretched toward a ceiling lost in shadow, and rusted mining equipment sat like sleeping giants in the harsh glare of portable floodlights. The air tasted of metal and old earth, but underneath it all was something else. The musk of wild animals and the tension that came with barely controlled violence. 7 figures stood scattered around the chamber, but Maya's attention was immediately drawn to the man at the center. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention without effort. When he smiled at their approach, she saw teeth that were just a little too sharp to be entirely human. "Kieran McReynolds," the man said, his voice carrying a slight accent that Maya couldn't place. "It's been a long time." Kieran went absolutely still beside her. "Marcus." "You remember me. I'm flattered." Marcus's smile widened, but there was nothing warm about it. "Though I suppose it would be hard to forget the Alpha who offered you sanctuary after the Silver Moon massacre." Maya felt Kieran's tension ratchet up another notch. "Sanctuary that came with conditions I couldn't meet." "Ah yes, the mating requirement. My daughter was quite disappointed when you declined her generous offer." Marcus's pale eyes flicked to Maya, and she felt like a mouse being studied by a hawk. "Though I see you found other companionship." "She's under my protection," Kieran said, his voice carrying a warning that made the air in the chamber feel electric. "Guest law, Marcus. You know the rules." "Rules?" Marcus laughed, and the sound echoed off the stone walls like breaking glass. "You gave up the right to invoke pack law when you chose to remain a lone boy. Lone wolves have no standing under the old traditions." One of the other figures stepped forward, a woman with auburn hair and predatory grace. Maya caught the family resemblance immediately. Marcus's daughter, the one whose mating offer Kieran had refused. Her green eyes burned with a hatred that was both personal and ancient. "Hello, Kieran," she purred. "You're looking worn." "Celeste." Kieran's acknowledgement was barely civil. "Still playing executioner for Daddy?" "Someone has to clean up the messes." Celeste's gaze flicked to Maya with undisguised contempt. "Like lone wolves who break the most fundamental law of our kind." Maya stepped forward, her medical training asserting itself even in the face of supernatural politics. "What law? Helping someone who was injured?" "The law against exposing our existence to humans," Marcus said, his voice deceptively mild. "A law that carries only one penalty." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt Kieran shift beside her, moving almost imperceptibly into a protective stance. "She saved my life," Kieran said quietly. "That creates a debt under the old ways, Marcus. Even you can't ignore that." "Debt?" Celeste laughed. "To a human?" "You've been alone too long, Kieran. It's made you sentimental." "Has it?" Marcus stepped closer, and Maya caught the scent that marked him as something other than human, musk and pine and barely controlled wildness. Or perhaps there's more to this than simple gratitude. His pale eyes fixed on Maya with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Tell me, Doctor." "Chen. Yes, we know who you are. What exactly did you see in those mountains?" Maya lifted her chin, drawing on years of dealing with hostile administrators and arrogant surgeons. "I saw someone who needed medical attention. I provided it. And nothing else." Marcus smiled, and Maya realized she'd just lied to someone who could probably smell deception. "Nothing else?" "No. Transformations? No moments when the man beside you became something altogether more dangerous?" Maya's mouth went dry. Beside her, Kieran was coiled like a spring, ready to explode into violence at the first sign of a direct threat. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said evenly. "No?" Marcus circled them slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. "Then you won't mind if we test that claim?" Before Maya could ask what he meant, Marcus nodded to one of his pack members. The man, young with the lean build of a runner, began to strip off his clothes with casual efficiency. "What are you doing?" Maya demanded. "Providing proof," Marcus said. "If you truly saw nothing supernatural in those mountains, then watching one of my pack shift should come as quite a shock." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She was trapped. Denying knowledge would expose her lie, but admitting the truth would confirm that she knew shifters existed. The young man finished undressing and dropped to all fours. Maya watched in horrified fascination as his body began to change, bones elongating, muscles reshaping, skin giving way to thick gray fur. Within moments, a massive wolf stood where a human had been just seconds before. Maya forced herself to gasp, to stumble backward as if in genuine shock. "What the hell?" "Interesting reaction," Marcus observed. "Fear, yes, but not surprise. Not the bone-deep terror most humans experience when confronted with the impossible." He signaled, and the wolf shifted back to human form with fluid grace. "You've seen this before, Doctor." "Chen." Maya said nothing, but she could feel Kieran's tension radiating beside her like heat. "Which brings us to an interesting dilemma," Marcus continued. "Normally, a human who learns our secret would be offered a choice: join a pack through mating, or die to protect our community. But you're not just any human, are you?" "What do you mean?" Marcus smiled, and Maya saw triumph in his pale eyes. "You're Kieran's mate. Oh, not officially claimed yet, but the signs are all there. The way he positions himself to protect you, the way your scents have started to blend, the connection that made him trust you with his most vulnerable form." "That's impossible," Maya said. But even as she spoke the words, she felt something deep inside her chest responding to the idea. A rightness she didn't want to examine too closely. "Is it?" Marcus moved closer, close enough that she could feel the supernatural heat radiating from his body. "Tell me, Doctor." "Chen, have you been having unusual dreams since meeting our Kieran? Moments of heightened awareness, perhaps? A sense that you can almost understand what he's thinking?" Maya's blood turned to ice. She had been having strange dreams, vivid, sensual experiences that left her feeling restless and on edge. And there had been moments when she'd seemed to sense Kieran's emotions, to know what he was thinking before he spoke. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied. "The bond is forming," Marcus said with satisfaction. "Slowly, naturally, the way it does between true mates. Which makes this situation far more complicated than a simple security breach." "Complicated how?" Kieran's voice was deadly quiet. "Because mated pairs are sacred under pack law. I can't simply execute her for knowing our secrets, not without cause for a blood challenge against you." Marcus's smile was razor sharp. but I can invoke the right of territorial claim. Maya saw Kieran go absolutely rigid. Marcus, don't. She's unmated, unprotected by any pack, and currently within my territory. According to the oldest laws, that gives me the right to claim her as my own. Marcus's eyes glittered with malice. Unless, of course, you'd care to challenge that claim. The chamber fell silent except for the distant drip of water and Maya's own thundering heartbeat. She could feel the weight of ancient laws and supernatural politics pressing down on them like a physical force. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. "Territorial claim," Celeste answered, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "It means you become property of the Nightfall Pack, subject to our laws, our protection, and our requirements. Including the requirement that unmated females be assigned mates by the Alpha," Marcus added. "For the good of the pack, you understand." Maya felt sick. Assigned to who? Marcus's smile was predatory. "Why, to whichever pack member I deem most suitable. Perhaps my son needs a mate, or one of the younger males who's proven his worth in battle." The threat was clear. Become Marcus's political pawn, or die as a security risk. "There is, of course, another option," Marcus continued casually. "Kieran could formally claim you as his mate, accept you into what remains of his bloodline, take responsibility for your actions, and remove you from my territory permanently." Maya looked at Kieran, seeing the conflict written across his features. Claiming her would protect her from Marcus's schemes, but it would also bind her to him permanently, change her on a cellular level, and quite possibly kill her if her human body couldn't adapt to the supernatural bond. "Kieran," she said quietly, "what happens if you claim me?" His amber eyes met hers, and she saw pain there, and regret, and something that might have been love. "You become mine. Completely, permanently, in ways that can never be undone. Your life becomes tied to mine. You age as I age. You share my strengths and my weaknesses. You become part of whatever's left of my pack." "And the risks?" "About 30% of humans don't survive the bonding process. Their bodies can't handle the metabolic changes." His voice was raw with honesty. "And even if you do survive, you'll never be fully human again. Never be able to go back to your old life." Maya thought about her comfortable existence in Seattle, the hospital job, the predictable routine, the safe, ordinary world she'd built for herself. Then she looked around the mining chamber at the pack of predators watching her with hungry eyes, at Marcus's cold smile and Celeste's burning hatred. "And if I don't choose the mating bond?" "Then you become my property," Marcus said simply, "subject to pack discipline, pack justice, and pack needs." The choice was no choice at all. Accept Kieran's claim and risk death for a chance at freedom, or become Marcus's pawn and definitely lose everything that made her who she was. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of David and Sarah, of the betrayal that had sent her running into these mountains. Then she opened them and looked at Kieran, wounded, haunted, but still standing between her and the darkness. "I choose you," she said quietly. "Whatever the risks, whatever the cost. I choose you." Something blazed to life in Kieran's amber eyes, surprise, gratitude, and something deeper that made her heart race. "Are you certain?" he asked. "Maya, this isn't something we can undo." "I'm certain." Marcus's expression darkened with frustrated rage, but pack law was pack law. "Very well, but the claiming must be done properly, witnessed by all present, sealed in the old way." He gestured to his pack members, who began forming a circle around Maya and Kieran. "You know the ritual, McReynolds, and you know the price of failure." Maya looked at Kieran, seeing the weight of centuries-old traditions settling on his shoulders. "What do I need to do?" "Trust me," he said simply. "And whatever happens, Don't let go. As the pack began to chant in a language older than civilization, Maya realized that her ordinary human life was about to end forever. The only question was whether she would survive long enough to see what came next. Chapter 6. The Bonding. The chanting filled the underground chamber with otherworldly resonance, words in a language that seemed to bypass Maya's conscious mind and speak directly to something primal in her blood. The Nightfall pack had arranged themselves in a perfect circle, their eyes reflecting the harsh floodlights like mirrors, and Maya felt the weight of their collective attention like a physical force. Kieran stood facing her, his amber eyes holding hers with an intensity that made the rest of the world seem to fade. In his right hand, he held a piece of obsidian, razor-sharp volcanic glass that gleamed black in the artificial light. "The claiming ritual is older than written history," he said, his voice pitched to carry over the chanting. "It's not just symbolic, Maya. It will change you on a molecular level, bind us together in ways that science doesn't have words for." Maya nodded, surprised by how calm she felt. Maybe it was shock, or maybe some deeper part of her had been preparing for this moment since she'd first looked into the wolf's golden eyes in the storm. "What do I need to do?" "Accept the bond willingly, completely. No reservations, no holding back." Kieran's voice was gentle but urgent. "If any part of you resists the connection, your body will reject the changes, and that will kill me," Maya finished. "I understand." Marcus stepped forward, his pale eyes glittering with something that might have been anticipation. "Before we proceed, let me be clear about what's happening here. This isn't a human marriage ceremony, Doctor. Chen, this is a blood bond that will fundamentally alter your biology. If you survive, you'll be tied to Kieran McReynolds until one of you dies. There is no divorce in pack law, no trial separation, no changing your mind when things get difficult." "I understand," Maya repeated, but Marcus wasn't finished. "You'll share his enemies, his exile, his lonely existence outside pack protection. You'll age as he ages, which means watching every human you've ever cared about grow old and die while you remain essentially unchanged. You'll feel his emotions as if they were your own, experience his pain, his fear, his rage. And if he dies?" Marcus smiled coldly. "Well, let's just say that mated pairs rarely survive the death of their bond partner for very long." Maya felt ice form in her stomach, but when she looked at Kieran, she saw only concern for her well-being, not doubt about his own feelings. "Are you trying to scare me away from this?" she asked Marcus. "I'm ensuring you understand the gravity of your choice. My pack will be bound by whatever decision you make tonight. We cannot interfere with a properly witnessed claiming." His expression darkened. "But we also cannot be held responsible if your human body simply cannot handle the transformation." Celeste spoke up from her position in the circle. 30% mortality rate, as Kieran mentioned. And of those who do survive, about half experience significant psychological trauma. The sudden influx of enhanced senses, the pack-mind connection, the awareness of every shifter within a 50-mile radius. It's overwhelming for human consciousness. Maya wondered if they were trying to spare her or hoping she'd back out so they could proceed with their original plan. Either way, it didn't matter. She'd already made her choice. "I'm ready," she said firmly. Kieran studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Give me your hands." Maya extended her palms toward him, noting absently that they were steadier than she'd expected. Kieran cradled them gently, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "The bond requires an exchange of blood," he explained. "Old magic, older than civilization. It will connect us on every level, physical, emotional, spiritual. You'll feel what I feel, know what I know, share in the strengths and weaknesses of my shifter nature. The obsidian blade was warm from his touch as he pressed it into her right palm. Maya felt the sharp sting as it cut across her lifeline, watched dark blood well up and overflow onto her wrist. "Now you," she said, offering him the blade. Kieran made a matching cut on his own palm, then pressed their wounded hands together. Maya gasped as their blood mingled, not from pain, but from the electric shock that ran up her arm at the contact. It felt like touching a live wire, like being struck by lightning in the most intimate way possible. The chanting grew louder, more insistent, and Maya realized that the pack members' eyes were now glowing with supernatural light. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken, charged with an energy that made her skin tingle and her hair stand on end. "Do you accept this bond willingly?" Kieran asked, his voice taking on a formal cadence. "Do you choose to bind your life to mine, to share in my nature, to become part of what remains of the McReynolds bloodline?" Maya felt something stirring deep in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with physical sensation. "I do. Do you swear to stand beside me in darkness and in light, in exile and in sanctuary, until death claims us both?" "I swear it." The warmth in her chest expanded, spreading through her body like liquid fire. Maya's vision blurred, and for a moment she thought she might faint. Then Kieran's other hand cupped her face, steadying her, and she felt his strength flowing into her through their joined palms. "And I accept you as my mate," Kieran said, his amber eyes blazing with supernatural light. "I bind myself to you willingly, completely, for as long as we both shall live. My strength is your strength, my life is your life, my fate is your fate." The moment he finished speaking, Maya felt something fundamental shift inside her. It started as heat in her blood, then spread outward like ripples in still water. Her senses exploded into hypersensitivity. She could suddenly smell individual pack members, could hear heartbeats and breathing patterns, could feel the electromagnetic fields of the mining equipment around them. But more than that, she could feel Kieran. Not just his physical presence, but his emotions, his thoughts, the fierce protectiveness and desperate hope that he was trying so hard to control. She could sense his wolf nature like a second heartbeat in her chest, wild and powerful and achingly lonely. The connection deepened, and suddenly Maya was experiencing flashes of his memories. Running through moonlit forests, the pain of losing his pack, 7 years of solitary wandering. The moment he'd first seen her, and felt something he'd thought was lost forever. The intimacy of it was overwhelming, too much information flooding her consciousness at once. Maya cried out, her free hand clutching at Kieran's shirt as her knees buckled. He caught her immediately, his arms strong around her waist, and she felt his concern spike through their bond. "Stay with me," he murmured against her ear. "I know it's too much, but you have to stay with me, Maya. Don't let go." Maya forced herself to breathe, to focus on the sound of his voice rather than the sensory chaos flooding her system. Gradually, the overwhelming rush began to settle into something more manageable. She was still hyper-aware of everything around her, but the information was organizing itself, becoming comprehensible rather than simply overwhelming. "Is it always like this?" she gasped. "The first few days are the hardest. Your brain is learning to process input it was never designed to handle." Kieran's voice was gentle, but she could feel his anxiety through their connection. "How do you feel?" Maya took careful inventory. Her body felt different, stronger, more alive, as if every cell was operating at peak efficiency. Her mind felt expanded, capable of processing multiple streams of information simultaneously. And underneath it all was the constant awareness of Kieran's presence, like a warm light in her consciousness. "Different," she said finally. "But not bad different." The relief that flooded through their bond was so intense it nearly brought tears to her eyes. Only then did Maya realize how afraid Kieran had been that the process would kill her, how much her survival meant to him. "The bond is sealed," Marcus announced, his voice cutting through the moment of connection. "Witnessed by the Nightfall Pack and bound by the old laws. Congratulations, Doctor. Chen, you're no longer entirely human." Maya looked around the circle of watching faces, noting the mixture of emotions she could now read with supernatural clarity. Most of the pack members seemed satisfied that proper ritual had been observed. Celeste looked furious. And Marcus looked like a man whose carefully laid plans had just been disrupted. "There is one more matter to address," he said, stepping forward with predatory grace. "The claiming is complete, but the question of justice remains." "Justice?" Kieran's voice carried a warning, and Maya felt his protective instincts flare through their bond. "For the massacre of your pack 7 years ago. For the murder of 32 innocent wolves." Marcus's pale eyes glittered with malice. "I know who betrayed you, Kieran. I know who sold your people to the Silvermoons for the promise of power." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. Maya felt Kieran go absolutely still beside her, his emotions shifting into something cold and deadly. "Elena's dead," Kieran said quietly. "Killed in a challenge fight 3 years ago. Justice was served." "Elena was just the messenger," Marcus replied. "The one who gave the orders, who orchestrated the entire betrayal. She's still very much alive." Maya felt Kieran's shock through their bond, followed immediately by a rage so pure and focused it made her step back instinctively. "Who?" The single word came out as a growl. Marcus smiled, showing too many teeth. "Someone very close to you. Someone who knew every detail of your pack's defenses, your patrol schedules, your most sacred traditions." He paused for maximum impact. "Your own mother, Kieran, the former Luna of the McReynolds pack." The revelation hit Kieran like a physical blow. Maya felt his knees nearly buckle, felt the foundations of his world cracking beneath the weight of this new betrayal. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Is it?" Who else could have known about the vulnerability window during the new moon ceremonies? Who else had access to the sacred bloodline records Elena would have needed to target your brother specifically? Marcus circled them slowly, a predator savoring his prey's pain. "Your mother orchestrated the entire massacre, then disappeared before the Silvermoons attacked. She's been living under pack protection ever since, spinning lies about how she barely escaped the slaughter." Maya reached for Kieran's hand, offering what comfort she could through their new bond. But she could feel him pulling away, retreating behind walls of pain and rage that even their connection couldn't breach. "Where is she?" Kieran's voice was barely human. Marcus's smile widened. "Safe in Silvermoon territory, under the protection of Alpha Gabriel himself." He paused. "Of course, if you wanted to seek justice for your murdered pack, you'd have to be willing to face Gabriel in formal challenge. Winner takes all, territory, pack, and the traitor who caused so much death." Maya realized with growing horror that this had all been planned. The hunt through the mountains, the confrontation in the mining complex, even the claiming ritual. All of it designed to bring Kieran to this moment, when he would be so consumed with rage that he'd accept an impossible challenge. "It's a trap," she said quietly. "Kieran, this is exactly what he wants." But Kieran was no longer hearing her. Through their bond, Maya could feel his emotions crystallizing into something single-minded and deadly. The need for justice, for revenge, for closure to 7 years of guilt and grief. "I accept Gabriel's challenge," he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute commitment. "Name the time and place." Marcus's triumphant smile was the last thing Maya saw before her newly enhanced senses overloaded completely, and the world went dark. When she woke, she would discover that her new mate had just committed them both to a fight they couldn't possibly win. Chapter 7. Revelations in Blood. Maya woke to the sound of running water and the scent of wood smoke. Her head was pounding, and every nerve in her body felt like it had been scraped raw. The supernatural senses that had seemed overwhelming before were now merely uncomfortable, settling into a new normal that her brain was slowly learning to process. She was lying on a bed of pine boughs in what looked like a natural cave chamber, wrapped in a thick wool blanket that smelled like Kieran. Emergency candles provided flickering light, and she could hear the distant sound of voices speaking in low, urgent tones. "You're awake." Kieran appeared in the cave entrance, carrying a tin cup that steamed in the cool air. "How do you feel?" Maya took careful inventory. Her body felt stronger than it ever had, but also somehow foreign, as if she was inhabiting a new version of herself. The constant awareness of Kieran's presence in her mind had settled into something less overwhelming, a warm connection that felt oddly comforting. "Like I've been hit by a truck," she said, accepting the cup. The liquid inside was some kind of herbal tea that tasted of mint and honey. "How long was I out?" 6 hours. Your body was adapting to the metabolic changes." Kieran settled beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth but careful not to crowd her. "The unconsciousness is normal. Most humans need several days to fully integrate shifter enhancements." Maya sipped the tea and studied his face in the candlelight. The rage she'd felt through their bond was still there, controlled, but burning, like banked coals. "Where are we?" "About 10 miles from the mining complex. Safe house I've used before." His amber eyes met hers. "Maya, about what happened back there." "You accepted a challenge to fight an alpha who's probably twice as strong as you are, backed by an entire pack, in territory that gives him every advantage." Maya's voice was steady, but she felt his wince through their bond. "Yes, I remember." "It's not that simple." "Isn't it?" She set down the cup and turned to face him fully. "Kieran, I may be new to this supernatural world, but I'm not stupid. Marcus played you perfectly. He knew exactly what revelation would push you past rational thought." Kieran's jaw tightened. "My mother orchestrated the murder of my entire pack. My brother died because of her betrayal. How is seeking justice for that irrational? Because it's not about justice. It's about revenge. And revenge makes you sloppy." Maya reached for his hand, feeling the tension in his muscles through their bond. "Tell me about Gabriel. Tell me what we're really walking into." Kieran was quiet for a long moment, staring at the flickering candle flames. Gabriel Silvermoon is the oldest alpha in the Pacific Northwest. He's been leading his pack for over a century, survived challenges from dozens of would-be usurpers. His territory stretches from the Columbia River to the Canadian border. And his pack? 43 wolves, all battle-tested, all absolutely loyal. They control some of the richest hunting grounds in North America. Kieran's voice was flat, emotionless. "In a formal challenge, it won't just be me against Gabriel. Pack law allows each alpha to choose champions for preliminary fights. I'll have to defeat at least 3 of his best fighters before I even face him." Maya felt sick. "So it's not a duel, it's an execution." "Maybe. Probably." Kieran finally looked at her and she saw something in his amber eyes that made her heart ache. "But it's the only chance I have to get close enough to my mother to learn the truth." "The truth about what?" "About why she did it. What Elena offered her that was worth the lives of everyone she'd sworn to protect." His voice cracked slightly. "My mother raised me, Maya. She taught me the old stories, the pack laws, the sacred obligations of leadership. The woman who did that doesn't become a traitor for money or political power." Maya felt his pain through their bond. Not just the fresh wound of betrayal, but years of guilt and self-doubt. You think there's more to the story? I have to believe there is, because if she really did orchestrate the massacre just to secure a better position with the Silvermoons. Kieran's hands clenched into fists. Then everything I thought I knew about family, about loyalty, about the foundations of pack society is a lie. Maya understood now why he'd accepted the challenge despite the impossible odds. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about finding answers to questions that had been eating at him for 7 years. Okay, she said quietly. So how do we even the odds? Kieran stared at her. We? You're my mate now, remember? Your fight is my fight. Maya felt a strange sense of rightness as she said the words. Besides, you'll need someone watching your back, someone they won't expect to be a threat. Maya, you've been enhanced for less than a day. You have no training, no experience with shifter combat, no understanding of pack dynamics in a challenge situation. Kieran's voice was gentle but firm. And even if you did, this isn't your war. It is now. Maya stood up, testing her new strength and balance. Everything felt more precise, more controlled than before. I may not understand pack politics, but I know strategy. I know how to read people, how to spot weaknesses, how to adapt under pressure. And I know you. She moved to stand in front of him, placing her hands on either side of his face. Through their bond, she let him feel her certainty, her commitment, the love that was growing stronger with every hour they spent connected. You've been alone for 7 years, she said softly. You don't have to be alone anymore. Something shifted in Kieran's expression. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of trust. The challenge is set for 3 nights from now, during the new moon when shifter abilities are at their weakest. It's traditional for important fights, levels the playing field between younger and older alphas. Where? Neutral ground, an ancient amphitheater in the Cascade Wilderness, carved from natural stone. It's been used for formal challenges for over 200 years. Kieran's voice took on a grim tone. There will be representatives from every major pack in the region. Whatever happens there will set precedents that last for generations. Maya nodded, her mind already working through possibilities. What about allies? Other packs that might support your claim? I'm a lone wolf, Maya. I have no standing in pack society, no political connections, no favors to call in. Kieran's smile was bitter. Most alphas would be happy to see me dead, one less potential challenger to their territories. But there are some who remember the old ways, who believe that justice matters more than political convenience. Kieran stood up, moving to the cave entrance. There's one alpha who might be willing to help. Problem is, she hates my guts. Because I killed her brother in a territory dispute 5 years ago. Kieran's voice was matter of fact. Self-defense, but that doesn't make him any less dead. Maya felt a headache building behind her eyes. Let me guess. She's the most powerful potential ally we could have. Alpha Rebecca Stormheart controls the coastal territories. Her pack is smaller than Gabriel's, but they're known for their tactical brilliance. If anyone could devise a strategy to give us a fighting chance, it's her. Kieran turned back toward Hawaj. Maya. Of course, she'd probably rather feed me to her wolves than help me. Then we'll have to convince her that helping us serves her interests. Maya joined him at the cave entrance, looking out at the star-filled sky. What does she want? Territory? Resources? Political leverage? Revenge against Gabriel Silvermoon for something that happened decades ago. Her pack and the Silvermoons have been enemies since before I was born. Kieran's expression thoughtful. If we could offer her a chance to weaken Gabriel's position, then helping us becomes strategically valuable, rather than just a personal favor. Maya nodded. Where do we find her? The coastal pack runs territory from the Olympic Peninsula down to the Oregon border. Their stronghold is on an island that's only accessible during low tide. Kieran looked at her seriously. Maya, approaching Rebecca Stormheart uninvited is considered an act of war by her pack. If this goes wrong, we won't live long enough to worry about the challenge with Gabriel. If we don't try, we definitely won't survive the challenge. Maya surprised herself with how calm she sounded. Besides, I'm curious to meet the woman whose brother you killed. Kieran winced. That's not exactly how I'd phrase it. How would you phrase it? Thomas Stormheart was trying to claim territory that belonged to a smaller pack. Elderly wolves who couldn't defend themselves. I intervened to protect them. The situation escalated, and... Kieran shrugged. Pack law is clear about territorial disputes. He challenged me to single combat, and I won. Maya heard what he wasn't saying. But you didn't have to kill him. I could have accepted his submission, claimed the territory, and let him live with the dishonor. Kieran's amber eyes were haunted, but I was angry, grieving, not thinking clearly. And Thomas said some things about my dead pack that, well, in that moment, mercy wasn't something I was capable of. Maya felt his guilt and regret through their bond, the weight of choices made in pain and rage. And now we need his sister's help. Yeah. Kieran's laugh was bitter. The irony isn't lost on me. Maya studied his profile in the starlight, noting the way he held himself, ready for violence but hoping it wouldn't be necessary. Through their bond, she could feel his conflicted emotions about the upcoming confrontation. There's something else, she said quietly. Something you're not telling me about Rebecca Stormheart. Kieran went very still. What makes you say that? I can feel it through our connection. Guilt, but not just about killing her brother. Something more... personal. Kieran was quiet for so long Maya thought he might not answer. Finally. Rebecca and I have history. Before the territorial dispute, before her brother's death, we were... involved. Involved how? We almost mated. Would have, probably, if the massacre hadn't happened. Kieran's voice was carefully controlled. She was the one who offered me sanctuary afterward, who helped me heal from my injuries. And I repaid that kindness by killing her brother and disappearing without explanation. Maya felt a stab of something that might have been jealousy, followed immediately by sympathy for all the pain and loss that seemed to follow Kieran wherever he went. So she has every reason to hate you. Multiple reasons, yeah? But she also loved you once. That has to count for something. Kieran looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You're remarkably understanding about me having feelings for another woman. I'm a surgeon, Kieran. I deal with life and death situations every day, which means I don't have time for petty jealousy. Maya turned to face him fully. Besides, I can feel through our bond that whatever you felt for her is nothing compared to what you feel for me. The honesty in her voice seemed to surprise him. And what do I feel for you? Maya stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell his scent mixed with hers in a way that felt completely right. Love. Fear that you'll lose me the way you've lost everyone else. Amazement that I chose this bond willingly. She reached up to touch his face. And hope that maybe you don't have to be alone anymore. Kieran caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. Maya, if this goes wrong, if Rebecca refuses to help us, if Gabriel's challenge is a trap, if my mother really is the traitor Marcus claims, then we'll face it together. Maya stood on her toes and kissed him, feeling his surprise and then his eager response through their bond. But it's not going to go wrong. We're going to find Rebecca, convince her to help us, and figure out the truth about what really happened to your pack. And then we're going to make sure the people responsible face justice. The real kind, not the revenge fantasy Marcus was selling. Maya pulled back to meet his eyes. But first, you need to teach me how to fight like a shifter. If I'm going to be your partner in this, I need to know how to protect myself. Kieran stared at her for a long moment, and Maya felt his emotions shifting through their bond. Surprise giving way to admiration, then to something deeper and more complex. You realize you're talking about taking on some of the most dangerous predators on the continent? I'm talking about standing beside my mate when he faces his demons. Maya's voice was steady, certain. I didn't survive medical school and surgical residency by backing down from impossible challenges. Kieran pulled her against him, holding her close enough that she could feel his heartbeat against her chest. God, what did I do to deserve you? You saved my life in a storm, Maya said simply. Everything else is just details. As they stood together in the cave entrance, looking out at the wilderness that had become their world, Maya realized that her old life, the hospital, the comfortable routine, even David and his betrayal, felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. She was no longer Dr. Maya Chen, trauma surgeon. She was Maya McReynolds, mate to a lone wolf and partner in a quest for truth that would either save them both or destroy them completely. But for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. Chapter 8. The Storm Alpha's Domain. The Pacific coastline stretched before them like something from a dream. Towering cliffs shrouded in mist, endless gray-green water, and tide pools that reflected the overcast sky like scattered mirrors. Maya had never seen the ocean from this perspective, wild and untamed, without the civilization that usually bordered it. They'd been traveling for 2 days, moving through old-growth forests and along game trails that seemed invisible until Kieran pointed them out. Maya's enhanced senses were still adapting, but she was beginning to understand how shifters navigated the world, through scent markers, territorial boundaries, and patterns of animal movement that told stories if you knew how to read them. There, Kieran said, pointing toward a rocky island about a mile offshore. Stormheart's stronghold. Maya shaded her eyes against the afternoon sun, studying the imposing fortress that rose from the waves like something out of a medieval legend. Stone walls that looked like they'd been carved from the island itself, towers that disappeared into the low-hanging clouds, and a causeway that connected to the mainland, currently submerged beneath several feet of churning water. How do we get across? We wait for low tide, which should be around sunset. Then we have maybe 2 hours before the causeway floods again. Kieran's expression was grim. If Rebecca decides to hold us longer than that, we'll be trapped until the next cycle. Maya heard the subtext. If Rebecca decided to exact revenge for her brother's death, they'd have no escape route. You really know how to show a girl a good time? Despite everything, Kieran smiled. You said you wanted adventure. This definitely qualifies. They made camp in a sheltered cove, hidden from view by overhanging rocks and wind-twisted pine trees. Kieran built a small fire while Maya inventoried their supplies. Not much beyond basic camping gear and the emergency medical kit that seemed to follow her everywhere. Tell me about Rebecca, Maya said as they shared a meal of dried meat and energy bars. What's she like? Kieran stared out at the island, his expression distant. Brilliant. Ruthless when she needs to be, but fair in her dealings. She became alpha at 19 when her father was killed in a hunting accident, and she's held the position for over 15 years despite constant challenges to her authority. Challenges from who? Younger males who think a female alpha is an easy target. Neighboring packs who see the coastal territory as valuable. Politicians who believe they can manipulate her into advantageous alliances. Kieran's voice carried admiration despite everything. She's survived them all through a combination of tactical brilliance and absolute ruthlessness when anyone threatens her pack. Maya caught the tone in his voice and felt that stab of jealousy again. You still care about her. It wasn't a question, and Kieran didn't try to deny it. I care about what happens to her, yes. But that's not the same as being in love with her. He turned to meet Maya's eyes. What I felt for Rebecca was comfortable, familiar, the kind of affection that grows between people who understand each other's responsibilities. And what you feel for me is nothing like that. Kieran's voice was rough with honesty. What I feel for you is terrifying, consuming, completely irrational. It's the kind of love that makes you do stupid things like accept impossible challenges and drag your mate into life-threatening situations. Maya smiled, feeling warmth spread through their bond. Good answer. As the sun began to set, the water level dropped steadily, revealing a stone causeway that looked ancient beyond measure. The rocks were worn smooth by countless tides, carved with symbols that might have been writing or might have been purely decorative. Time to go, Kieran said, shouldering his pack. Stay close, watch your footing, and whatever happens, let me do the talking until we know how we'll be received. The walk across the causeway was surreal. Waves crashed on either side of them, sending spray into the air that caught the dying sunlight like prisms. Maya could feel the ocean's power beneath their feet, the inexorable force that would reclaim this path in just a few hours. Halfway across, she sensed they were being watched. Enhanced hearing picked up the sound of movement on the cliffs above, the whisper of voices carried on the wind. By the time they reached the island, Maya counted at least 6 different positions where sentries might be hidden. They know we're here, she murmured. They've known since we reached the mainland, Kieran replied. Rebecca doesn't take chances with uninvited guests. The main gate was carved directly into the cliff face, massive wooden doors reinforced with iron bands that showed the green patina of age. As they approached, the doors swung open with the smooth silence of well-maintained machinery. A woman stood in the entrance, and Maya felt her breath catch. Rebecca Stormheart was nothing like what she'd expected. Average height, athletic build, with silver-streaked hair that suggested she was older than she looked. But it was her eyes that commanded attention, pale blue, almost colorless, with the kind of intensity that made Maya think of Arctic storms. Kieran McReynolds, Rebecca said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Maya couldn't place. You have some nerve showing your face here. Hello, Rebecca. Kieran's tone was carefully neutral. Thank you for allowing us to approach. I haven't decided whether to allow you to leave. Rebecca's gaze shifted to Maya, studying her with predatory assessment. And you must be the human who's been causing such a stir in pack politics. Dr. Maya Chen, if my sources are correct. Just Maya, please. And yes, I'm the one causing the stir. Maya stepped forward slightly, noting how Rebecca's wolves, she counted 8 of them positioned around the courtyard, tensed at the movement. Though I'm not entirely human anymore. Rebecca's eyebrows rose fractionally. Bonded, then. Interesting. Most humans don't survive the claiming process with a lone wolf. Too much chaos, not enough pack structure to stabilize the connection. She circled them slowly, like a predator evaluating potential threats. How long? 3 days, Maya answered. And you're still walking upright. Impressive. Rebecca stopped directly in front of Kieran, close enough that Maya could see the old pain and anger in her pale eyes. So, to what do I owe the displeasure of your visit? I need your help, Kieran said simply. Rebecca laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. My help? Let me see if I understand this correctly. 7 years ago, you disappeared from my territory without explanation, abandoning our planned mating bond. 2 years after that, you killed my brother in single combat. And now you want my help with something?" Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. "You always did have a talent for audacity." Maya felt Kieran's guilt and pain spike through their bond, but his voice remained steady. "I know I have no right to ask, but this isn't about me. It's about justice for 32 murdered wolves." "Justice?" Rebecca's expression hardened. "Where was justice when Thomas died? Where was justice when you left me to deal with the political fallout of a broken alliance? Where was justice for my pack when we lost face because our alpha's chosen mate decided we weren't worth his precious time?" The words hit Kieran like physical blows, and Maya could feel his control starting to crack. She stepped forward, placing herself partially between him and Rebecca. "You're right," Maya said quietly. "Kieran made mistakes, caused pain, handled situations badly. But right now, there's a chance to prevent more innocent deaths and bring actual killers to justice. Isn't that more important than settling old scores?" Rebecca's pale eyes fixed on Maya with laser intensity. "You have opinions about pack politics, little human. I have opinions about justice versus revenge, about focusing on what matters versus getting distracted by personal grievances." Maya kept her voice level despite the supernatural predators surrounding them. "And I have opinions about wasting opportunities because pride gets in the way of practical solutions." Several of Rebecca's wolves growled at the perceived insult to their alpha, but Rebecca herself seemed almost amused. "Practical solutions. Such as helping us expose the real traitors behind the McReynolds massacre in exchange for destabilizing your enemy's power base." Maya felt Kieran's surprise through their bond, but pressed on. "Gabriel Silvermoon has been untouchable for decades, but if his pack's reputation is built on lies and murder, that changes the political landscape considerably." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You think Gabriel was involved in the massacre?" "I think someone was pulling Elena's strings, and I doubt it was Kieran's mother acting alone." Maya glanced at Kieran, drawing strength from their bond. "Help us get close enough to learn the truth, and you'll either have justice for past wrongs or leverage against future threats." "And if the truth implicates Gabriel directly?" "Then you'll have grounds to challenge his territorial claims, demand reparations for harboring fugitives, and position yourself as the moral authority in regional pack politics." Maya could see she had Rebecca's attention now. That's worth more than revenge against one lone wolf. Rebecca studied Maya for several heartbeats, then turned to Kieran. "Your mate makes compelling arguments, but she doesn't speak for you." Her voice carried Arctic chill. "Tell me, Kieran, why did you really leave 7 years ago? And don't give me some noble nonsense about not wanting to burden me with your grief." Kieran was silent for so long Maya wondered if he would answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. "Because I was in love with a ghost. Because every time I looked at you, I saw the life I should have had, the pack I should have protected, the future that died with my brother." He met Rebecca's eyes directly. "You deserved better than a broken mate who might never heal from what he'd lost. So you made that choice for me?" Rebecca's voice was deadly quiet. "Decided what I could and couldn't handle, what I deserved or didn't deserve. Just like you decided Thomas deserved to die for defending what he saw as his rights." "Yes." The admission seemed to cost Kieran something vital. "And I've regretted both choices every day since." Rebecca stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "At least you're honest about it now." She turned to address her pack members. "Prepare guest quarters. Our visitors will be staying the night." Maya felt relief flood through her, followed immediately by wariness. "You'll help us?" "I'll consider it. But first, we're going to discuss terms. And you're going to prove that this alliance would be worth the risks I'd be taking." Rebecca's smile was sharp as winter ice. Hope you're prepared for some very uncomfortable conversations, Doctor. Chen. Because if you want my wolves to risk their lives for your mate's quest, you're going to have to convince me that he's worth saving. As they were led deeper into the stone fortress, Maya realized that the real negotiation was just beginning. And Rebecca Stormheart was not going to make it easy. Chapter 9. Truths and Bargains. The great hall of Rebecca's stronghold was carved directly from the living rock, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadows that flickered with firelight. Ancient tapestries depicted scenes of hunts and battles, while modern weapons, rifles, tactical gear, communication equipment, were displayed alongside traditional artifacts that spoke of centuries of pack history. Maya sat at a massive wooden table that could have accommodated 20 people, acutely aware of the 8 Stormheart wolves positioned around the room. Their attention felt like a physical weight, and she was grateful for Kieran's solid presence beside her and the steady comfort of their bond connection. Rebecca entered carrying a bottle of something that looked expensive and dangerous, followed by a woman Maya hadn't seen before, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of scars that suggested extensive combat experience. "My beta, Sarah Ironwood," Rebecca said, noting Maya's attention. "She'll be sitting in on our discussion." Maya felt Kieran tense at the beta's name, and through their bond came a flash of recognition tinged with old wariness. "Sarah?" Kieran acknowledged carefully. "Kieran." The beta's voice was flat, professionally neutral. "Heard you were dead. Disappointed?" "Relieved. Made explaining your disappearance to the other pack alphas much simpler." Sarah took a seat across from them, her movements fluid and controlled. "Though I see you've found new ways to complicate everyone's lives." Rebecca poured 4 glasses of whatever was in the bottle, something that smelled like whiskey, but burned with supernatural heat when Maya tasted it. "Now then, let's discuss what you're really asking for." She settled into her chair with the grace of someone comfortable wielding absolute authority. "You want me to risk my pack's safety, our territorial security, and our political standing to help you infiltrate Gabriel Silvermoon's stronghold and confront a woman who may or may not be a traitor." "When you put it like that, it sounds unreasonable," Maya said. "Because it is unreasonable. The smart play would be to turn you over to Gabriel myself, claim credit for capturing a rogue wolf and his human mate." Rebecca's pale eyes glittered with calculated malice. "It would strengthen my position considerably." Kieran's glass stopped halfway to his lips. "You're considering it." "I'm considering all options. That's what good alphas do." Rebecca leaned back in her chair, studying them both. "But I'm also curious about something. Gabriel's been untouchable for decades, carefully building alliances and maintaining just enough legitimacy to avoid serious challenges. What makes you think one lone wolf and his newly bonded mate can bring him down?" Maya felt this was a test, but she wasn't sure what answer Rebecca was looking for. "We can't. Not alone. That's why we need allies. Allies who would be taking enormous risks for uncertain benefits," Sarah pointed out. "What's our incentive?" "Beyond seeing justice done?" Maya asked. "Justice is a luxury for packs that don't have to worry about survival," Sarah replied bluntly. "We need concrete advantages." Maya looked at Kieran, drawing strength from their connection. "What if we could prove Gabriel was involved in other crimes? Other murders or betrayals that violate pack law?" Rebecca's expression sharpened. "Such as?" "I don't know yet. But alphas don't maintain power for over a century without making enemies, breaking promises, crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed." Maya leaned forward. "Help us get close to him, and we'll document everything we find. Even if we can't prove he orchestrated the McReynolds massacre, we might uncover other violations that would justify formal challenges." "Interesting theory," but it assumes Gabriel has been sloppy enough to leave evidence of his crimes lying around. Rebecca swirled the amber liquid in her glass. And it assumes I'm willing to risk pack war on the possibility that you might find something useful. Kieran had been quiet through most of this exchange, but now he spoke up. There's something else. Something I haven't told you about the massacre. Everyone at the table went still. Maya felt surprise and apprehension spike through their bond. What kind of something? Rebecca's voice was carefully controlled. The attack happened during a new moon ceremony, our most sacred ritual, when the entire pack was gathered in one place and our shifting abilities were at their weakest. Kieran's hands clenched into fists. But the Silvermoons didn't just know our schedule. They knew the exact layout of the ceremonial grounds, the positions of the guards, even which caves the elders would retreat to if the site was compromised. Sarah leaned forward intently. That level of detail requires more than just an inside source feeding information. That requires someone who'd been present for multiple ceremonies. Someone who'd been family, Kieran confirmed. But my mother wasn't the only person with that kind of access. Rebecca's pale eyes narrowed. Who else? Gabriel Silvermoon himself. He was mated to my aunt for 3 years before she died in a hunting accident. He attended our new moon ceremonies regularly during that time. Kieran met Rebecca's gaze. He had intimate knowledge of our most sacred traditions, our defensive layouts, our pack hierarchy. Maya felt pieces clicking into place in her mind. So Elena didn't betray you to Gabriel. Gabriel used Elena to implement a plan he'd been developing for years. That's my theory. Elena was always ambitious, always looking for ways to advance her position. Gabriel would have known exactly how to manipulate her into thinking betrayal was her idea. Kieran's voice carried bitter realization. And my mother? If she was involved at all, it might have been as another victim, not another conspirator. Rebecca and Sarah exchanged a look that spoke of years of partnership and shared understanding. If that's true, Sarah said slowly, then Gabriel's been playing a much longer game than anyone realized. The massacre wasn't just about territorial expansion. It was personal revenge against your family. Revenge for what? Maya asked. Kieran was quiet for a moment. My uncle, my father's brother, the one who was mated to Gabriel's late wife, discovered something that got him killed. Something Gabriel needed to keep secret. What kind of something? I don't know. I was young when it happened, and the adults didn't discuss it in front of the children. But I remember the arguments, the tension, the way certain pack members looked at Gabriel after my uncle died. Kieran's amber eyes were haunted. My father always believed the hunting accident was actually murder, but he could never prove it. Rebecca set down her glass with deliberate precision. You're suggesting Gabriel Silvermoon has been orchestrating murders and betrayals for decades to cover up some original crime. I'm suggesting he's had more motive for destroying my family than simple territorial ambition, Kieran replied. And if that's true, then helping me expose him serves your interests as well as mine. How so? Because if Gabriel's willing to commit mass murder to protect his secrets, what else might he do to maintain power? What other packs has he betrayed? What other alliances has he manipulated? Kieran leaned forward. You've been his enemy for years, Rebecca. Don't you want to know what weapons he's been planning to use against you? The question hung in the air like smoke. Maya could feel the tension in the room, the weight of old grievances and future possibilities. Finally, Rebecca spoke. Sarah, what's your assessment? The beta was quiet for several beats. High risk, potentially high reward. If we can document Gabriel's crimes, we destabilize the most powerful alpha in the region and position ourselves as champions of pack justice. If we fail... She shrugged. We're probably all dead anyway. Comforting, Maya muttered. Practical, Sarah corrected. Gabriel's been consolidating power for decades. Eventually, he's going to move against the coastal territories anyway. This might be our best chance to strike first. Rebecca stood and walked to one of the tall windows, staring out at the storm-tossed sea. The new moon is tomorrow night. If you're going to infiltrate the challenge ceremony, that's when it has to happen. You'll help us? Maya asked. I'll provide tactical support, intelligence, and extraction assistance if things go wrong. Rebecca turned back to face them. But the actual infiltration is your responsibility. My pack can't be directly involved without triggering a territorial war. Kieran nodded. What kind of support? Maps of Gabriel's stronghold, guard rotation schedules, communication equipment so we can monitor your progress. Sarah pulled out a tablet, already displaying architectural diagrams. We've been gathering intelligence on Silver Moon territory for years, waiting for the right opportunity. Maya studied the complex layout of buildings, tunnels, and defensive positions. It looks like a fortress. Because it is one. Gabriel's paranoid about security, with good reason. He's made a lot of enemies over the years. Rebecca rejoined them at the table. But there are weaknesses, service tunnels, blind spots in the surveillance system, times when guard coverage is minimal. Such as during formal challenge ceremonies, Sarah added. Most of Gabriel's security forces will be focused on the amphitheater, managing crowd control, and ensuring no one interferes with the fights. Maya felt a chill of premonition. Fights, plural. Pack law requires preliminary contests before the main challenge. You'll have to defeat at least 3 of Gabriel's chosen champions before you face him directly. Rebecca's expression was grim. And given what you've told me about his long-term planning, I suspect he's chosen those champions very carefully. Kieran's jaw tightened. Meaning? Meaning he's probably selected wolves specifically trained to counter your fighting style, your strengths, your preferred tactics. Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact. He's had 7 years to study your capabilities and plan accordingly. Maya felt ice form in her stomach. They weren't walking into a fair fight. They were walking into an elaborate execution designed to look like legitimate combat. Then we change the game, she said quietly. We don't fight on his terms. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Elaborate. Gabriel's expecting Kieran to fight alone, to follow traditional challenge protocols, to play by rules that favor the defending alpha. Maya could feel an idea forming, dangerous but possible. What if we didn't give him what he expects? Maya, Kieran said warningly, pack law is very specific about challenge conditions. If I break protocol, I forfeit any claim to justice. Not if we can prove the whole system has been corrupted from the beginning. Maya turned to Rebecca. You said Gabriel's been manipulating pack politics for decades. What if we could demonstrate that publicly during the ceremony itself? Rebecca's pale eyes gleamed with sudden interest. A counter-revelation. Accuse the accuser, so to speak. Exactly. Turn the challenge ceremony into a trial where Gabriel is the one being judged. Maya felt excitement building through her bond with Kieran. But we'd need evidence, documentation, witnesses who could corroborate the charges. I might be able to help with that, Sarah said slowly. There are other alphas who've suspected Gabriel of misconduct over the years. If we could coordinate with them, present a united front. It would have to be perfectly timed, Rebecca mused. One wrong move and we'd all be branded as conspirators against the established order. Maya looked around the table at the 3 shifters who were discussing revolution as casually as they might plan a hunting expedition. So, we do it right. We gather evidence, coordinate with allies, and make sure Gabriel can't squirm out of accountability when the truth comes to light. Kieran was quiet for a long moment, and Maya could feel conflict through their bond. hope warring with years of ingrained caution. "It could work," he said finally, "but we'd be risking everything on one throw of the dice. If we're wrong about Gabriel, if the evidence isn't as damning as we think, if the other alphas don't support us, then we'd die having tried to expose the truth instead of dying as pawns in someone else's game," Maya finished. "I know which option I prefer." Rebecca smiled, and for the first time since they'd arrived, it reached her pale eyes. "I'd forgotten how refreshing it is to work with people who think in terms of solutions instead of limitations." She turned to Sarah. "How quickly can we reach out to our potential allies?" "The Alpine Pack has been feuding with Gabriel over water rights for years. The Desert Wolves lost territory to him in a questionable arbitration decision. The Northern clans have suspected him of treaty violations but never had proof." Sarah was already making notes on her tablet. "If we move fast, we might be able to coordinate a unified response." "And what about evidence? We need more than suspicions and theories if we're going to make formal accusations." Maya felt the surgeon in her taking over, the part that believed in documentation and proof. "Do any of these other packs have records, witnesses, documentation of Gabriel's crimes?" "Some," Rebecca said thoughtfully. "But the most damaging evidence would be in Gabriel's own territory. Communication records, financial transactions, possibly even witnesses he's been keeping under control. Witnesses like my mother," Kieran added grimly, "among others. Gabriel's been collecting information and leverage for decades. If we could access his private files..." Rebecca's expression turned predatory. "But that would require getting someone inside his stronghold while everyone's distracted by the challenge ceremony." Maya felt pieces of the plan crystallizing in her mind. Someone unexpected. Someone he wouldn't see as a threat. "Maya, no." Kieran's voice was sharp with alarm. "You're not trained for infiltration work. And if you're caught..." "I'm a trauma surgeon with enhanced shifter senses and a bond connection that would let you know instantly if I was in trouble." Maya met his amber eyes steadily. "More importantly, I'm human enough that Gabriel's security protocols won't be designed to counter my abilities." Rebecca leaned back in her chair, studying Maya with newfound interest. "It's not completely insane. During challenge ceremonies, most of Gabriel's attention will be focused on the fights. Security around his private quarters would be minimal. And if something goes wrong, then I extract her while you're providing distraction in the amphitheater," Sarah said practically. "High risk, but manageable if we coordinate properly." Maya could feel Kieran's resistance through their bond, his protective instincts warring with tactical necessity. There has to be another way. Maybe, but not one that gives us as good a chance of success. Maya reached for his hand, letting him feel her certainty through their connection. "Kieran, I've spent years making life or death decisions under pressure. This isn't that different. This is completely different. Surgery doesn't involve people actively trying to kill you." "You'd be surprised," Maya said dryly, thinking of some of the more challenging emergency room situations she'd dealt with. "Besides, I won't be alone. I'll have backup, communication, and a mate who'll know the instant something goes wrong." Kieran stared at her for a long moment, and Maya could feel him testing their bond, gauging the strength of their connection. Finally, reluctantly, he nodded. "All right. But we do this with maximum preparation, multiple contingency plans, and extraction protocols that don't rely on everything going perfectly." He turned to Rebecca. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" "The challenge is tomorrow night. That gives us less than 18 hours to coordinate with other packs, brief Maya on infiltration techniques, and position everyone for the operation." Rebecca's expression was grim. "It's not much time." "Then we'd better get started," Sarah said, rising from the table. I'll begin reaching out to our potential allies. Rebecca, you should brief Maya on Gabriel's security systems and the layout of his stronghold. What about me? Kieran asked. You need to prepare for the fights of your life, Rebecca said bluntly. Even with our political maneuvering, you'll still need to survive long enough for the revelations to matter. And Gabriel's champions are going to be trying very hard to kill you. As they dispersed to their various preparations, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and terror, unlike anything she'd experienced in her medical career. Tomorrow night, they would either expose one of the most powerful alphas in North America as a murderer and traitor, or they would all die in the attempt. But for the first time since this supernatural odyssey began, Maya felt like they had a real chance of success. They had allies, they had a plan, and they had each other. Now they just had to survive long enough to see it through. Chapter 10. The Challenge. The ancient amphitheater carved into the mountainside was a testament to Shifte history. Massive stone tiers that could seat hundreds, surrounded by towering pines that whispered secrets in the evening wind. Torches burned in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows across faces that represented every major pack in the Pacific Northwest. Maya crouched in the Waisen forest above the amphitheater, her enhanced senses cataloging details that would have been invisible to her human perception just days ago. Guard positions, escape routes, the subtle territorial markers that told her which sections belonged to which packs. Through her bond with Kieran, she could feel his controlled tension as he prepared for the challenges ahead. "Radio check," Sarah's voice whispered through her earpiece. "Clear," Maya responded, adjusting the nearly invisible communication device Rebecca's pack had provided. "Remember, you have a 2-hour window while attention is focused on the preliminary fights. Gabriel's private study is in the North Tower, 3rd floor. Security should be minimal, but don't take unnecessary risks." Maya nodded, even though Sarah couldn't see her. The infiltration plan was elegantly simple. While Kieran fought for his life in the amphitheater below, she would break into Gabriel's stronghold and search for evidence of his crimes. Documents, recordings, anything that could support their accusations when Rebecca and the allied alphas made their dramatic intervention. Through their bond, she felt Kieran's spike of anxiety. He was thinking about her, worrying about the dangers she was about to face. Maya sent back waves of reassurance and determination, reminding him that they were in this together. "It's time," Rebecca's voice came through the radio. Gabriel's calling for the challenges to begin. Maya began making her way down the mountainside toward the Silver Moon stronghold, moving with the enhanced stealth and balance her new shifter abilities provided. The fortress was less than a mile from the amphitheater, connected by well-maintained trails that spoke of Gabriel's confidence in his security. Behind her, she heard the roar of the crowd as the first preliminary fight began. Through their bond, Maya felt Kieran's surge of adrenaline as he faced his first opponent, one of Gabriel's younger wolves, fast and aggressive but lacking experience. The fight was over quickly, Kieran's superior skill and tactical awareness overcoming his opponent's raw speed. One down, Maya thought. 2 more to go before the main event. The Silver Moon stronghold was impressive, a sprawling complex of stone buildings built into the natural contours of the mountainside. But its very size worked in Maya's favor, providing multiple approaches and enough architectural complexity to hide her movements. She slipped through a service entrance Rebecca's intelligence had identified, her enhanced hearing tracking the minimal security presence. Most of Gabriel's wolves were at the amphitheater, leaving only a skeleton crew to guard the compound. The North Tower was exactly where the reconnaissance had indicated, its upper floors accessible through a maintenance stairwell that bypassed the main security checkpoints. Maya climbed quickly, her surgical training helping her maintain steady breathing despite her racing heart. Gabriel's private study was behind a door that looked more decorative than functional, but Maya could smell the electronic components of a sophisticated security system. Fortunately, Rebecca had provided her with tools for this exact situation. A small device that could bypass most standard locks and alarm systems. The door opened silently, revealing a room that took Maya's breath away. The study was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that provided panoramic views of the surrounding wilderness. But it was the contents that made her heart race. Filing cabinets, computer systems, and walls lined with what looked like surveillance equipment. Maya activated a small camera Rebecca had given her and began documenting everything she could find. Financial records showing suspicious payments to various pack members. Communication logs that referenced the McReynolds problem, and cleanup operations. And most damning of all, a locked safe that her enhanced senses told her contained something important. Through their bond, she felt Kieran finish his second fight, this one more difficult, against an opponent who'd clearly studied his techniques. He was injured now, she could sense it, but still functional. Maya worked on the safe with growing urgency. Time was running short, and she still hadn't found the smoking gun they needed. The combination lock was beyond her abilities, but the device Rebecca had given her included tools for this contingency as well. The safe opened with a soft click, revealing documents that made Maya's blood run cold. Detailed plans for the McReynolds massacre, complete with maps, timelines, and notes in Gabriel's handwriting. Communication records showing years of correspondence with Elena, gradually manipulating her into position as his unwitting agent. And most shocking of all, evidence that Kieran's mother had discovered the plot and died trying to warn her pack. Maya photographed everything with shaking hands, her heart pounding as the full scope of Gabriel's crimes became clear. This wasn't just about territorial expansion. It was about covering up the murder of Kieran's uncle decades ago, eliminating witnesses who might expose Gabriel's role in that death. Through their bond, she felt Kieran beginning his third and most difficult preliminary fight. His opponent this time was older, more experienced, fighting with the ruthless efficiency of someone who'd survived dozens of challenges. Maya could feel Kieran's pain and exhaustion, his determination to reach the truth no matter the cost. "Maya, you need to get out of there." Sarah's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Security patrol is heading for the tower." Maya grabbed the most important documents and sealed the safe, her enhanced hearing picking up the sound of boots on stone. She slipped out of the study and into the maintenance stairwell, but the approaching voices told her the main route was compromised. Instead, she climbed higher, toward the tower's roof access. If she could get outside, she might be able to find an alternate route down. The roof was windswept and treacherous, but it provided exactly what she needed. A clear path to an adjacent building via a narrow stone bridge that connected the tower to the main fortress. Maya crossed quickly, her enhanced balance keeping her steady despite the gusting wind. Behind her, she heard voices in Gabriel's study, discovery of her intrusion. Alarms began sounding throughout the compound, but Maya was already moving, using her knowledge of the building layout to stay ahead of the search teams. Through their bond, she felt Kieran's triumph as he defeated his third opponent, but also his growing concern as he sensed her danger. The main challenge was about to begin, and he needed to focus on his own survival. Maya sent waves of reassurance through their connection, letting him know she was safe and had found what they needed. Then she concentrated on her own escape, making her way through service tunnels and maintenance corridors toward the extraction point where Sarah was waiting. She emerged from the fortress into the forest surrounding the amphitheater, where the roar of the crowd indicated that the main challenge had begun. Through their bond, Maya felt Kieran facing Gabriel directly, the older alpha's centuries of experience and political cunning against Kieran's desperate need for justice. "Maya?" Sarah appeared from the shadows, assault rifle ready. "Did you find it?" "Everything we need and more." Maya showed her the camera and documents. Gabriel orchestrated the entire massacre to cover up an older murder. Kieran's mother died trying to expose the truth. Sarah's expression was grim satisfaction. Then it's time to crash Gabriel's party. Together, they made their way toward the amphitheater, where the crowd was watching two alphas fight for supremacy and the right to define justice for an entire generation of shifters. Maya could feel through her bond that Kieran was losing, Gabriel's experience and political preparation giving him advantages that raw skill couldn't overcome. But they had something Gabriel didn't expect: the truth, documented and ready to be revealed to every major alpha in the region. As they reached the edge of the amphitheater, Maya saw Kieran fall, Gabriel's claws raking across his chest in a blow that would have been fatal without shifter healing abilities. The crowd roared approval, sensing the end of the challenge. "Now," Sarah said into her radio. Rebecca and her allies rose from their positions throughout the amphitheater, weapons ready, voices raised in formal accusation that cut through the crowd noise like thunder. "Gabriel Silvermoon." Rebecca's voice carried over the chaos. "You stand accused of murder, conspiracy, and violation of the oldest laws of our people." The revelation Maya had risked everything to obtain was about to change the shifter world forever. And through their bond, she felt Kieran surge back to his feet, fueled by righteous anger and the knowledge that justice was finally within reach. The real fight was just beginning. Chapter 11: Justice and New Beginnings. The amphitheater erupted into chaos as Rebecca's accusations echoed off the ancient stone walls. Alphas throughout the crowd rose to their feet, some supporting her claims, others roaring protests at the interruption of sacred ritual. Gabriel himself stood frozen in the center of the fighting ground, his silver fur matted with blood, golden eyes darting between the various threats now surrounding him. Maya felt Kieran's surge of hope and determination through their bond as he struggled to his feet. His injuries were severe. Gabriel's claws had opened deep gashes across his chest and left shoulder, but the knowledge that Maya had survived her infiltration mission and found the evidence they needed gave him strength to continue. "You dare interrupt a formal challenge?" Gabriel's voice carried the authority of centuries, but Maya could hear the uncertainty beneath it. "This is sacred ground, bound by laws older than your crimes." Rebecca cut him off, her pale eyes blazing with righteous fury. "Laws you violated repeatedly through murder, conspiracy, and betrayal of pack trust?" Sarah appeared at the edge of the fighting ground, the documents and photographic evidence Maya had gathered held high for all to see. "We have proof of your involvement in the McReynolds massacre, communication records, financial transactions, detailed planning documents in your own handwriting." The crowd's roar shifted from confusion to shock as the implications became clear. Several alphas who had been supporting Gabriel began backing away, recognizing the political danger of being associated with an accused mass murderer. Gabriel's golden eyes fixed on Maya as she emerged from the crowd, and she saw recognition flash across his lupine features. "The human. You sent the human to steal from me." "I sent my mate to uncover the truth," Kieran growled, his voice carrying despite his injuries. "The truth about how you murdered my uncle 30 years ago, then orchestrated the slaughter of my entire pack to cover up that crime." Lies. But Gabriel's denial lacked conviction, and Maya could see several pack alphas exchanging significant glances. "Then explain these," Sarah said, holding up Gabriel's own planning documents. Detailed maps of McReynolds' territory, communication logs with Elena spanning 2 years, financial records showing payments to mercenaries. She turned to address the crowd directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, Gabriel Silvermoon didn't just commit mass murder. He's been manipulating pack politics for decades through blackmail, assassination, and systematic elimination of anyone who threatened to expose his crimes." The political calculus in the amphitheater shifted visibly as alphas began reassessing their loyalties. Gabriel had maintained power through a careful balance of fear and respect, but evidence of his criminality changed everything. Supporting him now would mean being complicit in his crimes. "Even if your accusations were true," Gabriel said, his voice taking on a desperate edge, "they have no bearing on this challenge. Kieran McReynolds invoked formal combat to settle a blood debt. That combat will be completed according to traditional law." "Will it?" Rebecca stepped into the fighting ground, her own pack flanking her with weapons drawn. "Because according to the evidence we've uncovered, there was no legitimate blood debt. The McReynolds pack died not because of Elena's betrayal, but because of your decades-long conspiracy to eliminate witnesses to your original crimes." Maya felt Kieran's emotions spike through their bond. Pain, rage, and something that might have been relief as the full scope of Gabriel's manipulation became clear. "My mother," Kieran said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet amphitheater. "You killed her too, didn't you? She discovered your role in my uncle's death, tried to warn the pack, and you silenced her before the massacre." Gabriel's silence was answer enough. Around the amphitheater, even his own pack members were beginning to look uncertain, recognizing that their alpha's crimes might condemn them all. "The evidence speaks for itself," Rebecca continued. "Gabriel Silvermoon has violated every law that binds our people together. He's murdered innocents, manipulated pack politics through fear and deception, and built his power on a foundation of lies and blood. What do you propose?" The question came from Marcus Nightfall, his pale eyes calculating as he assessed the shifting political landscape. "Gabriel still commands the largest pack in the region. Even if your accusations are true, removing him would create a power vacuum that could destabilize the entire territory." Maya saw Rebecca smile and realized this too had been part of their planning. "I propose a new challenge. Not for Gabriel's territory or pack, but for his life. Let him face justice according to the oldest laws. Trial by combat against a champion chosen by the accusers." The crowd murmured approval. This was a resolution that satisfied both legal tradition and political necessity. Gabriel would face consequences for his crimes, but through established ritual rather than chaotic revolution. "And who would serve as champion?" Gabriel asked, his golden eyes already knowing the answer. "I will." Kieran stepped forward, his injuries already beginning to heal with shifter speed. "For my pack, my family, and every innocent who died because of your crimes." But Maya could feel through their bond that Kieran was still weakened from his previous fights, still bleeding from Gabriel's claws. In a fair fight between fresh opponents, he might have a chance. But after 3 preliminary battles and a partially completed challenge, he was operating at maybe 60% capacity. Gabriel must have sensed the same thing, because his confidence began returning. "Very well. But this time we fight to the death. No submissions, no mercy, no interruptions." His gaze swept the assembled alphas. "Agreed?" The crowd's approval was immediate and unanimous. This was the kind of justice they understood. Direct, personal, final. Maya felt panic spike through her chest. Kieran couldn't win this fight, not in his current condition. Gabriel was older, more experienced and fighting for his life with nothing left to lose. Through their bond, she felt Kieran's grim acceptance of the same reality. But he was going to fight anyway. Because justice mattered more than survival, because the truth deserved to be paid for in blood. "Wait," Maya said, stepping forward before she could talk herself out of it. "There's something else. Something the evidence revealed that changes everything." All eyes turned to her, and Maya felt the weight of supernatural attention like a physical force. Gabriel didn't just orchestrate the McReynolds massacre. He's been systematically eliminating threats to his power for decades. Alphas who questioned his methods, witnesses to his crimes, anyone who might expose the truth about how he built his empire. She turned to address the crowd directly. How many of you have lost pack members under suspicious circumstances? How many territorial disputes have been resolved in Gabriel's favor through what seemed like coincidental accidents? Maya could see recognition dawning on several faces as alphas began connecting dots they'd previously dismissed as paranoia. The Northern clan lost 3 potential alphas in hunting accidents over the past decade. The Desert Pack's previous leader died in a challenge fight against an opponent who disappeared immediately afterward. The Alpine Pack's water rights dispute was resolved when their chief negotiator died of sudden illness. Maya's voice carried the authority of someone presenting medical evidence. Too many coincidences, too many convenient deaths, too many eliminated obstacles to Gabriel's continued dominance. The political atmosphere in the amphitheater shifted again as alphas realized they might have been living under threat for years without recognizing it. "She's right," said a voice from the crowd. Alpha Sarah Ironwood stepped forward, her scarred face grim with recognition. "My predecessor died in what we were told was a challenge fight, but the wolf who killed him had no pack affiliation, no territorial claims, no apparent motive. He vanished the next day, and we never questioned it because challenge death is considered honorable." "Hired assassin," Rebecca said bluntly. "Paid to eliminate a threat and disappear." "How many others were there, Gabriel? How many good alphas died because they stood in your way?" Gabriel's silence was damning, but Maya could see him calculating odds, looking for escape routes or political solutions that might salvage his position. "It doesn't matter," he said finally. "Even if everything you've said is true, I still command the strongest pack in the region. My wolves are loyal. My territory is secure. My position is unassailable through anything but direct combat." "Is it?" The new voice came from within Gabriel's own pack, and Maya saw several of his wolves stepping away from their positions. A young woman with Gabriel's golden eyes and silver-streaked hair moved into the fighting ground. "Hello, Father," she said, her voice carrying years of suppressed pain. "Time to answer for what you've done to our family." Gabriel went absolutely still. "Lydia." "Your daughter," Rebecca said with satisfaction. "The one you thought died in a training accident 15 years ago. The one who actually survived and has been gathering evidence of your crimes ever since." Maya realized that Rebecca's plan had been even more comprehensive than she'd known. This revelation, Gabriel's own daughter testifying against him, would destroy any remaining loyalty from his pack. "You see, Gabriel," Lydia continued, "some of us never believed the official story about the McReynolds massacre. Some of us remembered Uncle Thomas asking questions about coincidental deaths and suspicious accidents. Some of us have been waiting for the right moment to expose the truth." Gabriel's pack was dissolving around him as wolves chose between loyalty to a criminal alpha and their own survival. Within minutes, he stood essentially alone in the center of the amphitheater, facing not just Kieran's challenge, but complete political and social destruction. "This changes nothing," Gabriel snarled, but his voice lacked its former authority. "I accept Kieran McReynolds' challenge. We fight now, to the death, according to traditional law." Maya felt Kieran's resolve through their bond, his acceptance that this was how it had to end. But she also felt his exhaustion, his accumulated injuries, his slim chances of survival against an opponent who still possessed most of his strength. Then inspiration struck. "Actually," Maya said, stepping into the fighting ground, "according to traditional law, the challenged party has the right to choose the format of combat." Gabriel chose single combat for the original challenge, but this is a new accusation requiring a new response. She turned to address the assembled alphas. "I invoke the right of pack justice. Let Gabriel face not just Kieran, but representatives of every pack he's wronged, every family he's destroyed, every life he's taken through treachery and murder. The crowd's approval was immediate and overwhelming. This was justice on a scale that satisfied both legal tradition and emotional necessity. Gabriel's golden eyes were desperate now, recognizing that he faced not a single opponent, but a dozen champions representing decades of accumulated grievances. "Beginning with me," Lydia said, her voice cold, with determined fury. "For Uncle Thomas, for my brother who died asking too many questions, for every innocent who suffered because of your ambitions." Maya felt Kieran's surprise and relief through their bond. This was no longer his fight alone. It was a reckoning that had been building for years, finally brought to justice through evidence, alliance, and the courage of those willing to speak truth to power. As the various pack champions prepared to face Gabriel in ritual combat, Maya realized that she and Kieran had accomplished something more than just exposing a murderer. They'd helped heal a wound in the Shifter community that had been festering for decades. "Together," Kieran said, taking her hand as they watched justice finally being served. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Maya squeezed his fingers, feeling the solid certainty of their bond and the promise of a future built on truth rather than deception. "Together," she agreed, and for the first time since this supernatural adventure began, she felt truly at peace. The old world was ending in blood and revelation, but the new one would be built on something stronger: trust, justice, and the unbreakable connection between two souls who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen love over fear. As Gabriel fell to the combined fury of his victims' champions, Maya realized that her comfortable old life was truly gone forever. But the woman she'd become, enhanced, bonded, part of a world larger and more dangerous and more beautiful than anything she'd imagined, was someone she was proud to be. The blood moon had brought her into Kieran's world, but love and justice would keep her there. Forever. Epilogue. 3 months later, Maya stood on the deck of their new cabin, watching the sunrise paint the mountain peaks in shades of gold and crimson. The structure was modest but well-built, constructed with help from Rebecca's pack on neutral territory that now belonged to her and Kieran. A place of their own, free from the political machinations and ancient grudges that had defined so much of the Shifter world. "Coffee's ready," Kieran said, emerging from the kitchen with 2 steaming mugs. Maya accepted hers gratefully, settling into the comfortable routine they'd developed over the past months. Her body had fully adapted to the Shifter enhancements now. The hyper-awareness had settled into something manageable. The bond connection with Kieran had deepened into a constant source of strength and comfort, and she'd even learned to access some limited shifting abilities, though nothing approaching full transformation. "Rebecca called this morning," Kieran said, settling beside her on the porch swing they'd installed the week before. "The Territorial Redistribution Council approved our proposal." Maya smiled. In the aftermath of Gabriel's death and the revelation of his crimes, the Shifter community had undergone massive political restructuring. Territories that had been controlled through fear and manipulation were being redistributed to packs that could govern them fairly. Kieran's status as a lone wolf had complicated his position in the new order, but Maya's unique situation as a bonded human had created interesting possibilities. "So, we're officially recognized as a micro-pack? Population of 2, but with full territorial rights and political representation." Kieran's satisfaction was evident through their bond. It took some creative interpretation of pack law, but Rebecca convinced the council that precedent supported it. Maya suspected Rebecca's arguments had been backed by practical politics as much as legal precedent. Having allies who'd helped expose Gabriel's corruption carried considerable weight in the new power structure. "Any word from the investigation commission?" "They're still finding bodies buried throughout Gabriel's former territory. Latest count is 37 suspicious deaths over the past 2 decades. Kieran's expression darkened. Lydia's been invaluable in guiding them to burial sites and hidden evidence caches. Maya was glad Gabriel's daughter had found some peace in helping bring her father's victims justice. The young woman had been carrying the weight of suspicion and partial knowledge for years, unable to act without proof, but tormented by what she suspected. "And your mother?" Kieran was quiet for a moment, as he always was when this subject came up. They'd found her body in a hidden gravesite, along with documentation proving that she'd died trying to warn the pack about Gabriel's planned attack, rather than participating in it. "The memorial service is next week. Rebecca's arranged for representatives from all the major packs to attend." His voice carried a mixture of grief and relief. 7 years of thinking she'd betrayed us, and it turns out she died trying to save us all. Maya reached for his hand, offering what comfort she could through their bond. Kieran's healing process had been complicated by layers of guilt, betrayal, and revelation, but he was making progress in learning to separate his mother's memory from the pain of the massacre. "She'd be proud of what you've accomplished," Maya said quietly. "Justice for your pack, truth about what really happened, a new start built on something other than revenge." She'd probably be shocked that her son ended up mated to a human doctor who talks back to alphas and thinks pack law needs modernizing. Maya laughed. "Speaking of which, I got a call from Seattle General yesterday." Kieran's attention sharpened. "About what?" "They want me to consult on a case involving what they're calling unusual physiological anomalies. Apparently, there's been an uptick in patients presenting with enhanced healing rates, heightened senses, and metabolic changes that don't fit any known medical conditions." "Shifters seeking human medical care?" "That's my guess. The supernatural community has been in upheaval since Gabriel's fall, and some wolves might be having trouble accessing traditional pack healers." Maya sipped her coffee, thinking about the possibilities. "I'm considering it." "Maya," Kieran's voice carried warning. "Getting involved with shifter medical issues on a professional level is complicated. There are secrecy concerns, territorial politics, the risk of exposing our existence to the broader human medical community." "All true. But there are also shifters who need help, and I might be uniquely qualified to provide it." Maya met his amber eyes. "I'm not talking about opening a supernatural clinic, but discreet consultation, emergency care for situations too dangerous for traditional pack healers. There's a need there." Maya could feel Kieran's conflicted emotions through their bond: pride in her skills and dedication, concern about the risks, recognition that she was probably right about the unmet need. "You'd want to base it here?" "Remote consultation mostly, with our cabin as a secure location for cases requiring extended treatment." Maya had been thinking about this possibility for weeks, drawn by the challenge of applying her medical training to enhanced physiology. "Rebecca's offered to help with referrals and security screening." "Of course she has." Kieran's smile was wry. "Rebecca's always looking for ways to expand her network of useful allies." "Is that a yes?" "It's a let's talk about security protocols and risk management before you start advertising your services to the supernatural community." Kieran stood and moved to the porch railing, scanning the forest that surrounded their territory with automatic wariness. "But yeah, if you want to do this, we'll make it work." Maya felt warmth spread through their bond, gratitude and love and the deep satisfaction of being understood completely by another person. This was what she'd been missing in her relationship with David. Not just trust and fidelity, but true partnership. Someone who supported her ambitions even when they complicated his life, who shared her values and commitment to helping others. "There's something else," she said, pulling a letter from her pocket. "This came yesterday." Kieran read quickly, his eyebrows rising. "Harvard wants you to guest lecture on trauma surgery techniques. They're specifically interested in my insights on accelerated healing and enhanced pain tolerance. Apparently, some of my surgical outcomes since the bonding have been statistically anomalous. Maya had been surprised when her former colleagues reached out, but she supposed her improved reflexes and enhanced senses would naturally translate to better surgical performance. You'd have to be careful about what you revealed. Obviously, but I think I could share general principles without compromising Shifter secrets. Approaches to pain management that work better with enhanced metabolisms, surgical techniques that account for accelerated healing rates. Maya felt excitement building at the possibilities. It could help human and Shifter patients. Kieran was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. You realize you're talking about becoming a bridge between two worlds. Human medicine and Shifter physiology, mainstream academia and supernatural reality. Is that a problem? It's dangerous, politically complicated, and probably inevitable given who you are. Kieran's smile was soft with affection. It's also exactly the kind of challenge you thrive on. Maya felt the truth of that assessment through their bond. She'd never been someone who chose the safe path when a more difficult but meaningful option was available. So you'd support it? I'd support anything that makes you happy and helps people who need help. Kieran returned to the swing, pulling her close enough that she could rest against his shoulder. But I reserve the right to worry about your safety and insist on extensive security measures. Deal. Maya settled into the comfortable warmth of their connection, thinking about the future they were building together. Any regrets? About how everything turned out, I mean. Kieran considered the question seriously. I regret the time wasted on guilt and self-blame. I regret not understanding sooner what really happened to my family. I regret the people who died because Gabriel's crimes weren't exposed earlier. But I don't regret the path that led me to you. Even with all the pain and loss and chaos. If that's what it took to find this, to find us, then I'd walk through it all again. Maya felt his certainty through their bond, the rock-solid foundation of love that had grown between them despite impossible circumstances and supernatural complications. I love you, she said, the words still feeling new enough to carry weight. I love you too. Kieran's voice was rough with emotion, more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher above the mountains, sharing the kind of peace that comes from having survived terrible trials and chosen to build something better from the aftermath. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from Rebecca. New case for your consideration. Lone wolf in Portland, serious injuries, needs discreet medical care. Interested? Maya showed Kieran the message, already knowing what her answer would be. When do we leave? Kieran asked, his smile telling her he'd already known her answer too. This afternoon, if we can manage it. Portland's only a few hours' drive, and if someone's badly injured? Maya was already mentally cataloging what medical supplies she'd need to pack. I'll call Rebecca and get details while you prep your gear. Kieran stood, moving with the fluid grace that still made her heart skip. Just another day in the life of the supernatural world's most unconventional medical consultant. Maya laughed, rising to follow him inside. You say that like it's a bad thing. Never. But I reserve the right to be amazed by how completely you've adapted to a world that would have terrified most humans. Maya paused in the doorway, looking back at the mountain vista that had become her home, then at Kieran, who had become her anchor in this strange new reality. 6 months ago, she'd been Dr. Maya Chen, trauma surgeon, living a carefully controlled life built on routine and professional achievement. That woman seemed like a stranger now. The Maya she'd become was stronger, more aware, part of something larger and more dangerous and infinitely more meaningful than anything she could have imagined. She was mated to a wolf, consulted for supernatural medical emergencies, and had helped bring down one of the most corrupt alphas in North American shifter history. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said as they entered the cabin. "What's that?" "I spent my whole career dealing with trauma, with crisis situations, with life and death decisions made under pressure. I thought I knew what high stakes looked like." Maya moved to the medical supply cabinet they'd installed in what used to be a guest bedroom, now converted into a fully equipped treatment room. But all of that was just practice for this. For what? For a life where every choice matters, where the people you save and the enemies you make can reshape entire communities, where love isn't just personal happiness but political alliance and supernatural bond and cosmic inevitability all rolled into one impossible package. Maya began packing supplies, her enhanced senses automatically calculating weights and space requirements. The old me would have called it insane. And the new you? Maya paused, considering. Through their bond, she could feel Kieran's patient attention, his genuine interest in her thoughts and feelings even after months of being connected at the deepest level. "The new me calls it home," she said finally. Terrifying, complicated, occasionally life-threatening home, but home nonetheless. Kieran moved behind her, his arms circling her waist as she worked. "Any regrets about the life you left behind?" Maya thought about Seattle General, about the comfortable apartment she'd shared with David, about the predictable routine that had defined her existence for years. None of it held any appeal now, not because it had been bad, but because it had been so much smaller than what she'd found here. "None," she said honestly. "Well, maybe one. Which is? I kind of wish David could see me now. Not because I want him back," Maya added quickly, feeling Kieran's spike of territorial concern through their bond, "but because I'd love to see his face when he realized what he gave up." The woman he cheated on turned out to be someone capable of bonding with supernatural predators and reforming ancient power structures. Kieran's laughter vibrated against her back. "Somehow I don't think he would have handled the revelation. Well, probably not. David liked his life orderly, predictable, safe. A mate who disappears for days to treat injured werewolves and occasionally testifies against criminal alphas would have given him nightmares." Maya zipped up her medical bag and turned in Kieran's arms. His loss. Definitely his loss. Kieran's voice was rough with the possessive love that still made her knees weak. "Ready to go save another life? With you? Always." As they prepared to leave their mountain sanctuary for another adventure in the supernatural world they'd helped reshape, Maya realized that the blood moon night that had changed everything was just the beginning of her story, not the end. She'd lived among humans all her life, until an alpha found her on a night when the world turned red with possibility. But what she'd discovered in the aftermath was something neither fully human nor entirely shifter. She'd become something new. Something uniquely her own. Dr. Maya McReynolds, trauma surgeon, supernatural consultant, mate to a lone wolf, and bridge between two worlds that were slowly learning to trust each other. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. And as they drove toward Portland and whatever crisis awaited them there, Maya couldn't imagine wanting anything else. The moon was new tonight, dark and full of potential. Perfect for new beginnings.